guy sitting next to him was talking to a guy right behind him. Two guys were talking behind me in the seats behind. So there's a conversation going behind me. There's a conversation going to the right of me. The guy, the driving, the road noise, honking the horn, and the radio is on. And I got tinnitus. And I'm sitting there trying not to ruin it for everybody because I was just trying, I'm going to maintain. I ended up lasting 15 minutes, 20 minutes with my fingers in my ears, pressing them, rocking forward, backwards and forward until I overloaded and I had a panic attack. And so I started yelling that I needed to get out of the van. I'd snapped. And they stopped the van, and I was yelling, open the door. And they opened the door, and I ran out, and I bolted and started running 10 miles back to the hotel because I was going to get back to the, safety. Because I was gone, I was losing it. And then, about 200 feet later, I realized, okay, this isn't going to work because the trauma of all the sound was gone. And that's when I calmed down, and I sat down on a stone wall, and I was on the verge of tears and just crying. I was right there and rocking. And one of the guys walks out from the van, and he comes next to me, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm rocking. Too much sound. And he put his hand on me, and I remember him saying it. He goes, "Matt, you're sweating and you're cold." He says, "You're in shock." And I'm rocking back and forth, repeating the same thing over and over. I'd gone into shock from sound, too much sound. True story. It took a while for me to recover. That's what I have to deal with. So that's why I'll be in a room sometimes, if something's going on, I go, I'm out. So there you go. One last question from anybody?
One question more, Matt. When was this Pentecostal movement started? 1906 or 1800?
I don't know. The Azusa Street Revival in the early 1900s. So there's different people who say different points about when it started, but I don't know. Okay.
Well, they claim that they started 1800s. That's why I want to know. They say Pentecostal movement started 1800s in Topeka. The revival in the church movement happened at the Azusa Street.
I don't know. I don't know the history. People have said different things. I've just heard different things. I've never looked into it. Haven't. Just never looked into it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, cool. I'm trying to speak loudly because I too have the same hearing problem as you. But this is a question.
Wait! I'm going to talk to you about it. You do, for real?
I do. Yes.
You get over?
Yes.
Do you get overloaded?
Beg your pardon?
Do you get overloaded with sound?
Yes, I do. So when you were telling the story, I could identify exactly with what you were saying.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, I know your time's limited. This is a question for you, and you will know the answer. But it's direct. It's for you, but more kind of directed at the coward atheist in the chat. Why is it? This is the question. Why is it that no atheist can articulate exactly how the God of the Bible does not exist? Why can't they articulate that?
Well, they can't. I've heard them say there's logical contradictions in the doctrine of the Trinity, and then I'll listen to them, and there's no contradiction that they produce. So I always wait. They say there's incoherence. In fact, if you go to the CARM website, there's a section, in atheism, there's a subsection, arguments against God, and there are various ones the atheists have given me over the years, and I just reproduce them and analyze them and respond to them, and they don't have a leg to stand on. They don't. The killer tick.
Right.
Challenge any atheist right now to give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open question to any atheist who's listening, but, you know, your position is God does not exist. Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine. Please articulate to me and everybody else here exactly how the God of the Bible does not exist.
Or why.
Or why, yeah.
Why?
Well,
What's the logical
give it a shot.
reason why it doesn't exist? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm off the bus. Well, yeah, so I'm an agnostic, but I don't think the God of the Bible exists if it's all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good, because I take the problem of evil very seriously.
Okay. So here's the problem with that. When someone says God is all loving or all knowing, I ask them, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, God is all good. I specifically said omnibenevolent, all good, meaning that
Okay.
he always does what ought to be done.
Okay. And what's the problem?
Well, the idea is that if God always does what ought to be done, and he's all powerful, and he can't fail with respect to bring about a certain action or a state of affairs, what it means to be all good is that he always does what ought to be done. And so if evil is defined as that which ought not to be done, well, it's just going to be the case that God is either not going to bring about that world or prevent it from happening, because all things considered it ought not to be done. And so if God exists, evil can't exist.
Okay. Can you define what evil is?
Yeah, I'm just understanding evil in the way the Christians understand it.
And how do Christians understand what evil is?
Something which goes against God's nature or something like that.
It goes against his moral character. Yeah, that's what evil is.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously in the Bible, God allows it to occur. So there's obviously from the Bible not a contradiction there because God allows it to occur.
Why?
Well, he has various reasons, but the why isn't the issue. Since you're going to do an internal critique, you go to the scriptures, and you say that it's impossible.
Sorry.
You're saying it's impossible for God to allow evil because it's evil, goes against his nature. Well, in the biblical position, no, it's not, because he allows it.
Yeah, so you said he allows it for reasons. Do reasons like justify a certain action? Like if God allows X to happen for a reason, well then X should happen, right? If God's reasons are good and X is necessary to bring about whatever reason is necessary for X to obtain.
Yeah, it's good to allow evil to exist then. No problem.
So I don't understand how it would be evil then.
Well, because he's allowing evil to exist. That's the word evil. He's allowing evil to exist. You say it's not evil, then you're not hearing the argument. You're not hearing it. Evil is evil. If you say, well, evil then isn't evil, well, what? But that's what evil is. It's bad. It's wrong. If he allows it,
and
that's good. No, it's not. That's not what it is. It's still evil by definition. So you're not understanding the issues, and you're playing with words.
I'm saying it wouldn't be evil. I'm saying if God is allowing an action because of reasons, and those reasons justify why the action obtains, then the action ought to obtain. And if we understand good to be that which ought to obtain, and evil is that which ought not to obtain, but God is allowing this action of so-called evil to obtain, then it's not in fact evil.
Yeah, you're playing with the word ought. The equivocations in the word ought, what God ought to do in different senses and stuff. So you've not analyzed.
Take the pawn on A1. A2, sorry. Take the pawn on A2. Oh, no, don't.
That's a shame.
Well, I was just in the room with his room today, and he invited me up on stage. He even modded me, and I didn't criticize him or there. I'm just laying down, my law there. You befriend a small number of people who are slanderers and defamers of me, then you're going to get blocked by me. Okay.
Of course.
Look, if somebody was going around slandering and defaming Matt Yester, okay, and Matt Yester and I disagree on some things, like Calvinism, but we're both brothers in Christ. We're friends. And if somebody was engaging in purposeful slander and defamation, I would talk with those people and say, get the hell out of here. You're a scumbag. Go away.
Yeah, I would think we would do that for any of us.
Yeah. But I got people who don't want to do. I'm not asking for special treatment. I am asking them to draw a line in the sand and saying, if you're going to utterly slander and defame someone like Dark Dawkins or other people, then you're scumbags. You lose the privilege of talking with us. But we have Christians who don't want to do that because they're ballless.
Right. Oh, yeah. As soon as you messaged me that message remember when Tom Rabbit was on stage? I mean, I no longer have anything associated with him, so I don't.
You're free to do it. I'm not trying to tell people what they can do. They're free to do that, and I'm free to block them.
Right. As a friend, though, I've known you for a long time, way before Tom Rabbit and all them. So it's like I respect you. So I mean, I'm not gonna associate myself with them.
I'm not angry with Jay Robin. I'm disappointed with him more than anything else. Okay, but you know what? You want to suck up to these people who slander me? Good. You're blocked. Okay. Now, if he comes to me and says, "Yeah, I'm not going to publicly talk with these small number of people anymore. I will not join them on stage, or if they show up on stage, I'm going to tell them to their face, I'm not going to talk with them." I'd say, "Fine, then I'll unblock you." I had somebody who I considered a friend, somebody I happened to like very much, who was hanging out with James is Tired, and I sent them a notification. I'm sorry, nothing personal, but I'm blocking your account now. After a day or so went by, they contacted me through a third party, and they said they're sorry about the situation, and they would like to be unblocked. And I said, okay, fine, I'll block you as long as you're not going to converse with that scumbag. James is Tired.
Right.
And that person said that they weren't going to talk with him anymore. And I said, okay, fine, I'll block the person's account. And I've done it to several other people too.
For sure. I always pray for Jay Robin. Always. I hope he comes back.
Well, I don't think they like the idea that, I set out an ultimatum and they have to somehow be subservient. They don't have to be subservient, but neither do I have to be subservient. Okay? You claim to be my friend and you're going to talk with these people who slander me? We're not talking about the low-life, knuckle-dragging, usual cockroaches, who say nasty things about me. I'm talking about a small number of people that have really crossed the line of, terms of service violation and engaged in public slander and defamation. I mean, for James is Tired to accuse me and say undoubtedly I'm a racist, the guy's a pig. He's disgusting. and by the way, and then he lied about the situation that I demanded that we do this publicly. have it out. I did not. In fact, I requested multiple instances that we resolve this issue privately so as not to make it a spectacle or a between one professing Christian and another. But he was the one who went out of his way to make it a public spectacle. So he's a big, James, I'm the kind of guy who likes to get a cup of coffee, and he's trying to represent himself as a dignified, mature adult. He's not. He's a little scumbag.
I think James is tired is an attention whore.
I think he is too. I mean, I think he demonstrates it by hanging out with. Hold on a second. Hold on, Derek. I think he is because he hangs out with the most vile of people over long periods of time. He doesn't challenge them about their bad behavior. He just look. I don't have any respect for him at all. So go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, earlier I opened a room and there was this guy and he brought up Leviticus. What was it? About slavery and.
Oh, here we go. Here we go again.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't read.
Slavery referred to anybody who had to serve anyone else for whatever reason, and did not necessarily constitute kidnapping and forced labor. It could be any type of contractual agreement.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a classic atheist cliche.
Look,
Okay.
this guy was so idiotic that he didn't read Leviticus 25, where it's like the Lord spoke to him and it's like give the food to the slaves and everything, but this guy had like a agenda and he forgot to act the verses.
They're harping on the slavery issue. Excuse me. They're harping on the slavery issue is a testimony to their ineptness.
Yeah, no.
Okay. Because when we look at it, is it's talking about people who have served other people. Okay. Now, even if there are certain instances where you could buy a slave from a foreign country, okay, where it was forced labor. What you were doing was you were buying a kind of contract, but you had to release them in the 7th year. So this is a means by which God, with the Israelis, if my understanding is correct, and I could be wrong about this, where you could buy somebody who was in forced servitude, you could buy them, but then they had to be released after a short period of time. Okay? So this is God freeing these people from the kind of slavery that was ubiquitous in the world.
Right. And mind you, Exodus 21, 16 even says, whoever steals a man, okay, and sells him and his family shall be put to death. So the Bible goes against slavery.
Yeah.
In multiple verses. This is what they like to do, and then they sit there and they impose their morality on you, saying that it's wrong to have slavery. But in their worldview, technically, none of this is wrong. Okay, so it's a huge contradiction. It's a cliche that they like to use.
Can I say something really quick, Mark? When he brought that up,
Yes.
when he brought it up, I wasn't aware of it. He just threw it out, and I was like looking at Leviticus 24, the verses before, I guess 40, I guess 44 to 46. I looked at the verses before, and then I look at the chapter after that, and it's like he doesn't understand the context. If we just read it just plain like that, it talks about like the Jews and it's like he also talked about all Christians. He made all Christians. I have a screenshot of it. I took a screenshot.
Look, this is really pathetic, right? And it's pathetic because Rather than give us a knockdown, solid defeater for the existence of God, or specifically the God of Christian theism, all they get is, I hate your God. I don't like your God. He allowed slavery.
Oh my god, that's the best.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, okay. You know, it's so bad. That's as dumb as that. Okay. It's a cliche. You know, King.
Okay, guys. Sorry, I have the screenshot. Let me read it out.
I got.
Okay, let's read it out. Okay, he said that Leviticus. Oh, my mistake. It's 25. It's 25. But talking about the Sabbath is and about the slaves, and it's more into it is in chapter 26. Right? And then so he brought up Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46. And then after that, he said, also Christianity, there's people starting your mind. Oh, sorry. Okay, he said, this guy named Man, he's like, also Christianity urges people, owning people as a property. And the next thing he says is...
This is a complete bastardization of the text in question. Paul was under the rule of the Roman Empire. Paul knew that if he called for people rebelling against their slave masters, this would have caused the Roman hand to come down upon them as insurrectionists. Okay?
I wish I could
so in Paul's mind, with the spread of Christianity, you'll have the disillusion of slavery. Now, unfortunately, it took a while for that to finally happen. Okay, the disillusion of slavery in the modern world took place starting in Great Britain under the British Empire, under the leadership of Wilberforce, who argued from a Christian perspective for the abolition of slavery, which led to the abolition of slavery in the States. Okay.
And he said, all Christian dodging away when it comes to slavery.
Well, this goes to show you how they've got nothing, right?
Yeah.
Because he has nothing substantive. It's more of a form of a teenage mentality attack. Okay, they don't have a substantive attack against the God of the Bible. So they go, oh, look, God allowed slaves.
Urges them to own slave as property. And I was trying to figure out, Darth, is he concerned about just the word slave, or because I would understand if it's not treated rightly and everything. So if it what is he griping about? I was trying to figure out. I wish I had a chance to.
One more time, when Paul was writing to a slave, was that he was telling him, listen, we are in a current system where forced servitude is a part of the economic system in the Roman Empire, okay? We have to abide by the system, and we have a higher priority, and that is to get the gospel out. If Christians were following Paul's lead and rebelling against the economic system that allowed forced servitude, okay, that would have given the Roman Empire even further reasons to slaughter all the Christians. Okay, so this is people who are intellectually bankrupt, who really don't have anything substantive to attack biblical Christianity theologically or philosophically. Whenever they bring up the slavery issue, it's because they're really bankrupt.
Yeah, it's something about participation. I was doing a little bit of research, and I haven't read Leviticus, and I'm still trying to figure out the concept. So what I've learned, Darth, and enlightened is it was a participation in the slave trade with the non-Israelites.
Look, replace the word servant.
Yeah.
And then when you come across it, then you ask, okay, well, what kind of servanthood is this referring to? Okay. Is it some type of contractual agreement for service or servitude? Or is it a form of involuntary servitude?
I read something about that too. It's not a slave. It's under, how should I put it? It's like you work for somebody under, but it's not like it shouldn't be called. And it talked about something about the brethren, the Israelites are not to, I guess, to each other, I guess treat each harshly. That's the. I'm sorry if I'm off over. It's just my first time.
It's okay. No, it's pathetic. Look, we have a guy by the name of Josh Bowen who has a PhD in Assyriology, who's written a book called An Atheist Guide to the Old Testament. And one of the issues that he harps on when you see him on YouTube channels is the issue of slavery. This is how pathetic they are. Okay. This is a guy who, when I spoke with him for at least an hour, his defense of atheism was worse than that of certain teenagers that I've encountered on Discord. I mean, he was appallingly bad. And then when I encountered him again on Discord, and I asked him a question, he refused to answer the question. I said, "Well, why?" And he goes, "Well, I don't like your attitude." And I said, "Well, have I mistreated you here?" Okay, it was all a charade. It's because he knew that the last time we had an hour-long discussion, he got annihilated, and his atheism was annihilated, all right?
Yeah.
And yet this guy writes a book, The Atheist Guide to, the Old Testament. He just tried to go, oh, my atheism, I don't have a reason to believe in God, I think gods are made up. I mean, it's so lame. You would think that you're making it up and creating a caricature.
And also, Doc, I read Leviticus earlier, 25, 39 to 46, and Leviticus was it. If your brother to come forward beside you and sells himself to you, you shall not make him serve as a slave. He shall be with you as a hired worker and as a souvenir. He shall serve with you until the year of Jubilee. Then he shall go out from you, he and his children with him, and go back to his own clan and return to the possession of his fathers, for they are my servant, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt.
Yeah, does that sound like the kind of slavery that was in the world outside of Israel?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he started with verse 44, 45, and he didn't touch 46 or even the chapter after that. I started reading more, and it's like, it's...
Can I just add this real quick? This is something that King Xerxes likes to do.
That guy's a train wreck.
Yeah, JR1, the Three Stooges of Atheism.
Oh my gosh!
This.
Yeah.
And it's a tactic that they like to use, so they can. It's pretty much a sophistry type of tactic where it keeps you to shut up, and it makes you like, oh wait, so the Bible does support slavery, but look, Derek, all you need to do is point out Exodus 21:16 to them, and then it says clearly that God goes against slavery. So therefore, it states that is not the same slavery as the Transatlantic slave trade is what they make it out to be. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I was not aware of that voice and enlightened, because he just put that verse, and then I read the chapter 25, I guess, and it's like, you have to, like, it's just they treat them right, whether it's, they're slaves or not, so it's just, he tried to make it like, let's isolate verses to make it like, why, God is, evil and mean and...
Yeah, no. It's not the same slavery, okay? It's servitude. It's very, very different to the slavery that they think of, I can't say the word, the African-American slavery. They tried to associate it to be the same, and it isn't. It's a stupid little cliche tactic that they like to use. But all you got to do is quote Exodus 21, and then they'll sit there and say, well, wait a minute, so there's a contradiction. No. There's no contradiction in the Bible. It's just you're misunderstanding it because you're assuming that it's the same slavery as the slavery that happened in America, and it's not anywhere close. It's just you don't get it, and that's why they're stupid, and that's why it's a horrible tactic.
I couldn't get what
There's
you
a provision. There's a provision in the Mosaic Law that if somebody is quote unquote a slave, a servant, that if they love their quote master to such an extent and they want to serve him for the rest of their life, they can make a public testimony of it by piercing their ear. Okay. Now, why would they want to do that if slavery all had to do with involuntary man stealing and involuntary servitude?
I have no idea. That just is new to me. I'm gonna go over it.
Well, it just goes to show you the confirmation bias that they're operating from. They have no other grounds upon which to, excuse me, I'm eating the cheese that's go after the God of the Bible.
I was I was just thinking, I was also thinking about where they were always another thing atheists, unbelievers would bring up is like you brought this up before where it's like something about the babies or something. I remember, but
Yeah, it's always the dead babies and the slave issue. That's the best you got.
Oh yeah, the Noah flood. That there were babies. That they assumed that there were babies at that time that drowned. So they also assume that God's an asshole for that reason.
which one is the one? It's like something about the rock or something. You cannot what's how you should say?
Are you talking about the
strike
psalm?
them.
Are you talking about the psalm where it claims to bash babies against rocks or something?
Yes,
like that?
yes. Okay,
That's not
yes.
talking about the Israelites, God's chosen people. It's talking about something that the Canaanites did. They used to do this to their
No. That's an imprecatory psalm where the psalmist is venting his frustration and anger toward the utter brutality and for the destruction of their enemy, even that their offspring would die. Now, it's expressed in very gruesome terms, okay? But it is not in order to go out and smash babies' heads on rocks.
Yeah, never.
Okay?
God never said that.
That's why it's called an imprecatory psalm. And anybody who quotes that shows you what imbeciles they are, because they don't understand the nature of the imprecatory psalm.
So it's not the same where I remember you talked about this before, where if they can get rid of certain groups of people because of the, I want to say seed or something, then they would have become like.
No, it is where the psalmist is reacting emotionally to the suffering and abuse at the hands of Israel's captors and wishing God's justice and wrath would come upon those who were subjugating Israel. Okay, this is not a bloodthirstiness of somebody just wanting to kill the children of their enemies. Okay, it's not as simple as that.
Don't mind me, Darth. It's like because they always bring like, why does have the children have to suffer if it's by these evil I guess group of people? So why does, and then like a guy got rid of them, and it's like,
well, why do you, I'll say to the atheist, okay, do you have children? They go, yeah. Well, why'd you bring them into the world knowing that they would suffer?
I know, that's a good one. I never thought of that. That's actually really cool. That's a good one.
remember
Everybody who's ever lived, okay, has experienced suffering at different levels. Some people will experience less suffering. Some people will have greater suffering, both mental and emotional. But they have the means not to have children. Okay, but they chose to bring children into the world knowing that they're going to die and to suffer. You brought children into the world knowing that every waking moment, once they're old enough, they realize they're going to die. They have to deal with the fear of their death. Now, of course, I'm being sarcastic, giving kind of an atheist slant on this. But you see, we can say the same things about them. They're hypocrites. Okay?
Yeah, abortion.
In
I
the
mean, look,
Bible,
they want to support the vast slaughter of babies, okay? And they want to sit there and try to make it a right, saying that
Indiscriminate killing of babies. The killing of babies in the Old Testament was not indiscriminate. Okay?
yeah, exactly.
I even suspect that the order to kill every living thing among the Canaanites and the Amalekites could be understood in part that what we had was the sexual deviancy was so bad that it introduced numerous sexual transmitted diseases, and to the point where it caused corruption in the DNA code that would have passed down through generations and spread to other nations. And so God decided, okay, I can either let them live and then they're going to spread the infection to other people, or they're going to get an early departure. Now, what they really object to is the means to the early departure. Okay?
yes,
So when they talk about killing of children, women, babies, okay, there are two issues you want to keep in mind. One is the early departure, the cessation of human life or the ending of human life, and the means to it. And we have to make a careful distinction between the two, because either they're going to say that the ending of life is what's the real issue, or they'll say that it is the means of ending the life that is the problem, that it's ugly and distasteful, okay, or it's a combination of the two. So which is it?
Yeah, you brought that up. That's what I wanted to mention, though. That's what I wanted to get at. I just thank you for helping me remind, because in the room I was in, I was talking about it, I was trying to remember that stuff.
Yeah, no problem. That's what a brother's for.
I knew this.
You see, look, these arguments, even coming from people who have PhDs like Josh Bowen and others, this is. I mean, I'm sorry to say this. I'm not saying it because I disagree with it. These attacks are lame. They really are. It's an attack out of desperation.
Yeah, Jeff Trimble. I'm sure you know him, Darth.
He's a moron.
He trembles a lot for sure. Yeah, he's using this tactic now. He's going around in clubhouses where Christians, obviously, who do not know how to defend the Christianity, and he uses this tactic that the Bible supports slavery, and a lot of the Christians, they don't know what to say. It's pretty bad.
I don't even know what to say. That's why I asked Darth and you to help me better understand.
So, well, what kind of slavery are you talking about?
Yeah. Jeff Trimble is horrible.
And so, are you saying that the Bible supports kidnapping and forced labor? Now, there are instances where you could buy a slave from another country, but according to the Jewish system, you had to release them in the year of Jubilee. So what you're actually doing is you're not buying a antebellum type slave for the rest of their life. What you're doing is you're in essence buying contractual labor, and then they're going to have to be released in a few years. And you're supposed to love them as your neighbor.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So what's happening is when you buy a slave, okay, because the person who owns it wants to be compensated for it, they're not going to go by the Mosaic law. So what you're actually doing is you're buying them a path to their freedom. Okay?
If you read it, Leviticus 25, if you just read it like that, it's...
If somebody, look, if you save somebody from the horrors of pagan slavery, don't you think that they would be motivated and want to serve you for a few years as a way of thanking them?
Yeah,
Okay.
Gratitude.
Okay. So the slave just meant anyone who was subservient and in service to somebody else, who we would call the master. But people had this in the mind. They had this whole idea of antebellum slavery. Okay.
You know, they were treated good, and that's what I couldn't get what he's trying. It's I can understand because if you're a slave, like they make the connotation really bad. That's look at the word slave. That's treat them like trash, treat them like garbage, less than human.
We are dealing with adults who are the victims of a new mental disorder. It's called trans teenagerism. They are teenagers trapped in adult bodies. Okay, and they reason like teenagers. Right?
That's a new thing in Latin.
No,
Trans teenagerism.
I think you're wrong. I think Mr. Herman Munster is actually.
Oh my gosh! You know something? I was laughing to myself the other day when I got a notice from Patrick Voss inviting me to his room, and I just started laughing. And somebody said, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Because Herman Munster just invited me to the room." I go, "What?" They go, "Herman Munster." I go, "Yeah, Patrick Voss." He goes, "Well, why do you call him Herman Munster?" And I said, "Well, that's the epithet or name that Enlighten gives Patrick Voss because he's not very appealing and he's also not that smart." So
It is his background. If you see, there's a famous picture of Herman Munster in a red background. Okay. And there's a picture of Patrick Voss, and if you look at the picture of Herman Munster and Patrick Voss, it's like I think he should be Herman Munster for Halloween.
and at least Herman Munster was a lovable character.
But Elmo.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Herman Munster was very childlike and kind of innocent, and there wasn't a mean bone in his body, so to speak. We can't say that for Patrick Voss, aka the Clubhouse Herman Munster.
No, I know. He just acts like I think all he needs to do is put green makeup on, and he'll be good. I think that'd be a good Halloween costume.
No, when I think of Patrick Voss, I think of the way Fred Gwynn would laugh.
Yeah. I love that show.
You know what? It's still funny after all these years. It has stood the test of time. It's a very well written and very well acted TV show. Not like the garbage we have today on TV.
Oh no, I know.
But you'll notice there's a pattern here that when I am questioning the atheists, they will start off being polite and cordial and thoughtful, and then they degenerate over time, obfuscating, prevaricating. Then they go into definitional games. Then they try to rabbit trail. They try gaslighting. Then they bickering. Anything to stalemate the interaction.
Can I ask another question too?
No, you cannot. Shut up.
No, go ahead, Derek.
Wait a minute. I have to keep up my reputation that I'm not a nice person.
No, you're not.
Go ahead, Derek.
So in the text chat, can you address it? Okay, may you guys explain the Christian context of forgiving your enemies, not even in the sense of non-retaliation, but providing extra service to your enemies? And then it says, how come the Jews were not allowed to retaliate against Gentiles, but Gentiles can't retaliate for themselves?
I don't know what you're referring to. You're going to have to... Oh, he's not here anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like... Yeah,
look at this guy's name. Does anybody think that that's a real name?
What guys?
No.
Hargesian citizen. Yeah, where is Hargesia? Where is that?
Yeah.
I'm 61 years old. I've never heard of Hargesia.
I never heard of that too. Yeah. I just want to be knowledgeable. I think that I just ask questions. I just want to.
Oh, African archaeology. Okay, yeah.
We'll Google it.
Do you know one among several reasons why Africa never developed economically where Europe did?
Why?
When I heard this, I was shocked. Africa, and I'm willing to be corrected on this, as always, Africa doesn't have deep water ports. Okay. And so what you need for effective commerce is for ships to come right in close to the shoreline. Okay. And so according to one analysis that I heard, and I'm going to assume it's true until somebody brings me information to the contrary, around Africa, the water is very shallow. Okay. Whereas in Europe, you have deeper water ports. Okay.
I always think about someone else where they would make a well, and then that's how they get water. You know.
We also have to take into consideration the deep occultism that was so prevalent in Africa. That's been a big impediment to the African continent.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I see we have another person here. He subscribes to a heck of a lot of atheists.
Hey, by the way,
Yeah.
did you hear about what Lookout for Number One is doing?
I haven't paying attention to that moron. And the guy is fundamentally stupid.
Oh, it's been a while. Look out for.
He claimed that he sent you a message, and that you didn't even read it, or something like that.
He might have been. I might have read it, but I don't take the moron seriously.
Of course.
You know, look, why doesn't he show up in any room that I'm in that I don't have mods in, and he can challenge?
Oh.
He doesn't do so, does he?
Yeah. Well,
I'm in other rooms on a regular basis. You mean to tell me he can't find me?
He's the biggest troll I have ever seen. The biggest.
No. He's philosophically illiterate. He doesn't, and the guy is even more warped than Dark Dawkins debunked.
Oh yeah. He claims that he has your address and everything, and he knows where you live. Like, that's gonna make... And then he goes like, I'm gonna send to all the Darth Squad his address. It's like, well, like, we really give a shit.
And look, even if I were to concede that he did, and... Is that some big accomplishment in the internet age that we have? That if you even fill out a registration card, if you buy a radio to the radio company, this goes in databases and it spreads all over in databases that are bought and sold. I mean, is he a super secret CIA agent that went to the National Security Agency and go, I got Dark Dawkins' address? I mean, this is the kind of imbeciles we're dealing with.
No, I know. They make it like it matters, like it's a big deal.
I'm not saying that they have it, okay? But the point is, even if they were to have it, okay? Why does this even matter? It's just good. Look, this is another example of Darth Dawkins derangement syndrome.
Yeah, DD Dumper messaged me a while, and then he wants to.
By the way, Bert H is another atheist flunky hiding behind a sock account. Okay,
I don't know who he is.
Because if Bert H were truly a Christian, he wouldn't be following some of the worst scumbags on his list. So this is a dead giveaway that he is an unbeliever.
It could also, what's his name? He always came in our rooms and trolled us. What's his name? Explicit. That could also be him. Who knows?
Well, he can come up and explain why he has some of the most vile people whom he's following, and he can come on and explain that. But I guarantee you he won't come up. Okay, and if he does, then I'll just say, ooh, I was wrong. Come on up, Bill. You're a reluctant atheist. Come on up. Tell us why your atheism is reasonable. Okay? Come on up, Bill. Yeah. Okay, so tell me why you're a reluctant atheist.
Can you hear guys?
I can hear you, sir. Go ahead. Why are you an atheist?
Hey, I would just like to be honest with you and tell you, I'm not very smart, but I don't think I would be good. I've never debated anyone in my life.
Bert, listen. The smartest people know how much they don't know. So don't be so hard on yourself, okay? if I have areas of
appreciate
knowledge
that.
that you don't, I am more than willing to, not go in areas that you don't feel comfortable with. Just, I can talk at all different levels. Not that I'm trying to pretend like I'm superior to you, but, being smart is recognizing that you're not wise in your own eyes, that there's vast things that we don't know, okay? So that's one of the first steps in being smart, is recognizing a lot that you don't know. So I'm complimenting you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But I've never debated anyone before. I usually just like to listen.
Then I'm not going to debate with you. We'll have a conversation, okay? I don't mind going after the hard-nosed atheists like it's an MMA fight, And if given what you told me, I'm just willing just to say, okay, why do you find your atheism reasonable?
I couldn't even tell you anything like that. The best I can tell you is I don't believe in a God, and I would like to believe in a God, but I don't believe in a God, and that's kind of why I'm here. I'm kind of trying to. Okay. I'm looking for something, and I'm hoping to find it. Basically,
I think that you don't want God to exist, but you want to pretend that you want to. And let me tell you why. Okay. If Christian theism, the Christian worldview, is true, then you're born with an inherited sin disposition where you don't want God to exist. Okay? And so you have only two options. You can either acknowledge that God is, and then turn to the God who you know is in repentance and turn to him to save you from your guilt and culpability, or you will just, believe in God and then just manufacture some work salvation, right? So in the Christian theistic position, you and I have an inherited sin disposition, and unbelievers will if they choose not to believe in the one true God, who by definition will have to be perfect, right? Because the Christian God is categorized as being perfect, regardless of what, critics of Christianity will say. Any God that's not perfect basically isn't God. Because now we have a God who can't control everything, right? Okay. Now, so we inherit a sinful disposition, and people reinforce that to varying degrees. That's why some people cure cancer or polio, and other people become mass murderers, right? So there are varying degrees of our sinful disposition that's enacted. But a part of that sinful disposition is we don't want to acknowledge God as God, either on a small scale or on a grand scale. So rather than acknowledge God, the Romans 1 says that we turn and worship the creation. Okay? And worshiping the creation is just accepting the creation as it is, but without dependence and derivation upon God, not acknowledging God as the source and the basis of everything and being thankful to him. So there's only two alternatives. Either we acknowledge that everything is indicative and revelatory of God and his eternal powers, or we will concoct that this world just is in terms of its fundamental parameters without reference to the necessity of God. But unfortunately, the latter position is untenable and it's indefensible. Okay? And the reason why unbelievers don't realize this is because they don't want to realize it. Okay? And now, I'm going to explain to you why now, okay? Now, if you look, where you are right now, is there an object that you see in your room? Yeah. Okay. Now, in order for you to appropriate that object is and its intelligibility, the object in question, you're going to have to recognize mentally that it possesses identity and identity over time. In other words, it is what it is in any time index, and that it has continuing identity over time. Okay? So, for example, let's take an apple on the counter. When you look at that apple, in order for you to recognize that it is, an apple must be an apple, right? But a minute later, somebody could drop a big piece of slate on it, and now it's applesauce. It's no longer an apple. Okay? So, in order for you and I to have intelligible grasp of the world around us, things must possess identity and identity over time. Okay? Now, this is critical to understanding how the world reveals God, right? So an object in question, whether it's the apple on the counter or anything else, if we acknowledge that it possesses identity so that we can recognize its actuality and intelligibility, the identity either has to be self-contained or derivative. That the thing possesses identity in and of itself without dependence or derivation from anything, or the thing in question that has identity and identity over time is that there is something else that it possesses identity and possesses identity immutably.
So I agree with you about it being a heart thing. They're desperate to hang on to their atheism, even in the face of irrefutable evidence. Irrefutable. Which is why, globally, as only 7% of the global population are atheists.
Yeah, I was the room I had earlier tonight, you'd come in there at the last, Gavin, but I was talking to James Coletta, and he was talking about how he doesn't see evidence for God. And I'd asked him, I said, you don't see evidence for God. Well, please explain to me what the evidence for God should look like in order for you to say that there is evidence. And, and I've asked atheists that question before, too, and they stumble around and fumble around, and a lot of them will say, well, I just don't know. So wait a minute. You're saying there's no evidence, but you won't be able to recognize evidence if you saw it. Of course, pointing to God. So if you don't know if you're going to say there's no evidence for God, you would have to be able to tell me what the evidence for God should look like. And I explained to James, I said, look, in order for you to say there's no evidence, for example, if you said that there's no evidence for X, you would have to know what the evidence for X should look like in order for you to say that is not there. You'd have to understand what it looks like to determine you don't see it around. And I've heard atheists say things like that, well, if I saw God, or if God, wrote his name in the sky, if he did this, but, if I see God, then I'll be convinced. And I asked him, I said, forcing you to say them. No one's forcing you to deny the true and living God. On that day of judgment, you will be condemned, and that condemnation will be just and holy, and ultimately will be good, because you will be getting what you deserve. I don't want that for you, but that's what's going to happen. So yeah, it's good.
Wait, but do you think that God creating a world in which there's agents who just always obey him and nobody has to face judgment, is that a worse world than a world in which some people face judgment?
You're making a lot of mistakes here. Is it worse? Worse in what sense? Logically, by his character revealed morally. Then you have to establish what the moral system is. You see, and you can only do that from inside of God's character. Yeah, hold on, and you're just not focusing. You're not getting it. I'm trying to tell you, you cannot find anything wrong with the Christian God. You're trying to, but you're not doing it. I could ask you, and I'll ask you, write down a series of premises. 1, 2, 3. Take your time to think.
My question.
Well, I'm trying to offer you the opportunity to put your questions in better arranged thought as they relate to each other. I'm offering you the opportunity because you keep making mistakes. I keep pointing them out. You keep ignoring them.
I said I would do that, but look, can you just answer?
Then do it. Then do that.
Do you want to end the conversation? Is that it?
I'm just saying we're going in circles. You keep repeating. You remind me, as the proverb says, a dog that returns to its own vomit. You keep doing.
Yeah, isn't it?
I don't see my name on the screen, so it doesn't look like it.
But it does say
But you thought-
Physicalist 1. That does sound like you.
It sounds like me. But also, you know the move where I could have won your queen back, right?
No, you said when you played A5, and I'm going back to that now.
So I played A5.
Did you say A5?
So I played A5 on move 14.
I'm not playing anymore.
Move 14.
I'm just playing by
That's right,
myself.
right.
I don't like that.
A5, yeah.
That's right.
It's just a
And
proxy.
you played bishop F4.
Yes.
I wanted to play bishop B4.
Oh, pinning the queen to the king. Yeah, I wasn't
I played
really.
A5 for this.
I wasn't paying that much attention to that sort of thing.
Oh, that's a cope. Yeah.
Detroit, are you playing blind or something? Where were you coming up with?
I'll explain.
No.
No, I just wanted to practice my chess, right? That's how this started. And then these two got involved. And then the deal was that Detroit and I are on like one side, and I have to say what piece, and then he says like where to move it, right? So
Okay.
I guess it's like a massive handicap for Detroit. That's what that was. then
Hey, at least you
he
can
said-
say that you made it to 70 moves with me.
I mean, I was
More than
stressed
Magnus
out.
made against Hans.
They're both yelling at me, and I'm
Yeah.
like fucking stressed out. So it was not very enjoyable.
And then it just ended there? What happened? Or did you resign?
No, I think I was checkmated, wasn't I?
She lost on time in the first one, and she blundered the queen pretty early in the second.
It wasn't that early.
But then I also blundered my queen, but she didn't see it. She had a missed win on that because of what Detroit just said.
Dueling both has
even
gambits.
Even at that point, I wasn't winning. We were still losing.
Okay.
You still have material if you just like.
Thanks for playing, Haley. I hope we've given you a good starter to have a relationship with chess.
HS now. Both
Let's
of you.
go.
So that didn't
Let's
really.
go. Let's be gatekeepy
this is-
some more.
This is how you learn chess, actually.
Yes,
This is the hazing ritual.
This is how you learn
If
chess.
you, yeah,
You
if you're not reading
couldn't
it,
even like stand up with me when you've got like the best chess player in the community on your side.
Yeah, he can't do much if I give him the wrong fucking piece, can he?
Yeah, but look, if you're not hating the game and all the players around you, then you're not learning chess,
Great.
right?
Great.
Yeah, welcome to the game.
What would that mean?
No, what I'm saying is either the apple on the counter or any other fact for that matter. We could even just say your own self-reflective consciousness. Either any individual facts under consideration indicate God or they don't. Okay? Okay. Yes. Now, we are going to have to decide whether individual objects and other things indicate God or not. Okay? The Bible says that ever since the beginning of the creation of the world, God's eternal powers have been clearly seen through everything that is made. What this is referring about is that these things possess identity and identity over time. And they're either going to have to indicate the absolute or not. If they don't indicate the absolute, then the person is either going to have to say, well, they don't indicate anything, or they're going to have to claim that the entity in itself is absolute. A good look finding somebody who does that.
If someone did say that it doesn't indicate anything, what's the problem with that?
The problem is that they don't live that way. They live every single day as though things possess actuality, that they possess identity, and identity over time, and from that, they derive intelligibility. Okay? Intelligibility. When I say intelligibility, I mean that something means something in terms of what it actually is, and that we actually have some appropriation of that mentally. Not that the human mind just simply conceptually imposes what something means, whether or not it corresponds to what it is.
Okay.
So there's two kinds of intelligibility. There's two kinds of intelligibility. There's metaphysical and semantic intelligibility. Okay? We're not disputing semantic intelligibility, like if I tell you I want a pepperoni pizza. You can understand that. It's semantically intelligible. But the question is, right, in a world without God, where nothing is identified as being singularly ultimate and absolute, then what is it that dictates what any instance is, can be, or cannot be? If there is in actuality nothing that dictates what anything is, then there's no intelligibility.
Okay.
Intelligibility is derivative. It is dependent upon what something actually is, right? And our human minds coming to appropriate that, right? Okay. The reason why we think schizophrenics are crazy is because they're deriving intelligibility that is not commensurate with what we consider is the nature of the facts that they're talking about. That's why we think they're crazy. Because what they're just saying is simply in a figment of their imagination. Okay? What they're describing is not commensurate with the nature of things in and of themselves as we conclude it. So we conclude they're crazy. Right?
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So you don't believe it's possible for someone to want to believe in God and not to believe, but not to believe in God?
I think that there can be a certain aspect of you who wants to believe in God, but there's another aspect that's even stronger, that you don't want to believe in God because then you're culpable. And so that your mind, through a confirmation bias, collects rationales, atheist sloganism, so that your desire to be not culpable is greater than your desire to believe that God exists. It's kind of like a scientist, a great scientist who wants to believe some great truth, even if it mitigates against his most important theory, but overall his desire that his theory be true overwhelms his desire to know what's really true.
Okay, that's something I'm going to have to think. Yeah, that's something I'm going to have to think about, because I'm just being honest. I truly do believe that I do want to believe in God, and I think I have panic. I have a really unnatural fear of death, because I'm afraid that when I die, there's just going to be absolute nothingness, and that just absolutely just paralyzes me with fear.
Well,
I have panic attacks.
It shouldn't.
Okay.
Okay. Now that's not gonna make you feel better by me going, well, you shouldn't. I mean, like if I sit down next to you in the airplane and you're terrified of flying, and I sit down and I go, well, you shouldn't be afraid. That's not gonna help you, even though you shouldn't. Well, so what I'm gonna have to do. Look. Let me just explain this to you. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of habit. I don't think anybody can dispute that. And so in order to change our habits, both physical and mental, requires moment-by-moment decisions and repetition. So if you want to get rid of certain behavioral or mental habits, it requires moment-by-moment decisions with repetition over time, and then it results in a change of behavioral and mental habits. Okay?
Okay. Yep.
So if it was true that when you die, you're just going to go into nothingness, that's not really something to be afraid of. Okay?
I've heard that.
It's just like, let me just give you an analogy. It's like, do you fear going to sleep? Because when you go to sleep, you're going into an unconscious state. Now, I'm not eliminating the notion that we have dreams, but people rarely remember their dreams, okay? But you're going into a state of unconsciousness. Well, if death is just simply a permanent state of unconsciousness, there's nothing to fear that. But you see, you and I and everybody else, we are made in the image of God. We know intuitively, and because of the way God constructed this world, that when you die, this is not the end of life. That there's going to be an accountability. It's basic to human consciousness. But human consciousness wants to rid itself of culpability toward God. That's why human consciousness tries to manufacture an alternative worldview rather than the worldview that God has made evident to us. Okay? And that let me just say one more thing. That unbelieving rationale is facilitated, it is eased by popular notions such as evolution. Okay? The theory of evolution has done great damage, if you will, to the concept of just general theism and Christian theism. Because people then have a kind of fertile ground by which their God denialism can grow and flourish. Evolution doesn't get you to atheism, ipso facto, but it does provide the fertile conceptual soil out of which your God denialism can grow. Even Julian Huxley, the grandson of T.H. Huxley, who was Darwin's pit bull, said Darwin's greatest achievement was the removal of God from the sphere of rational discussion. Okay? So if you believe that human beings are the product of eons of time and billions of years of human evolution, okay, then you reason, well, I don't need God. Okay?
Yeah, I don't feel I don't feel that way. I'm looking for God, and that's why I don't feel that I don't need God or that.
Well, let me put it this way. Do you consider yourself a basically rational person? You don't consider yourself crazy, right?
No, I just don't think I'm as like when I hear you guys debate, I'm just nowhere near that smart.
No, that's okay. Hey, listen, it's all a matter of practice. You know, Serena Williams did not get to become a great tennis player. It took a lot of practice, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, your own self-consciousness, where you reflect that you're a basically reasonable and rational person, would be utterly meaningless if what was fundamental to everything was not this world to operate in certain ways. Now, the way to understand this philosophically is God, which would be that which is the rational, the ground of all being. Okay? The alternative to that is that what is fundamental to everything is not a rational. Either our being rational beings are the product of ultimately what is in control of everything is a rational mind, or one will adopt the notion that their rationality somehow was exuded over eons of time from what is fundamentally not a rational state, meaning that it's not a rational mind. Now, if what is ultimate, dictating all instances, is not a rational mind, okay, and it is the non-rational, I'm not saying to believe in it is to be irrational, although I agree with that, but I'm not saying at that moment, but that whatever the fundamental nature of everything is not a rational mind, such as God, then there's no basis for human rationality. In spite of the fact that human beings claim that it's an emergent property of evolution, that's just passing the buck. It's just begging the question. Either we live in a world where everything is just spontaneous occurrences, or we're going to be in a world where we have the cascading dominoes of cause and effect, and therefore whatever our mental states are as time goes on, we're dictated by millions or billions of years of the molecular dominoes ticking away. And so your mental states couldn't have been otherwise. Okay? Okay. So in a world without God, human irrationality doesn't exist. Okay? That's another way that what God has made, rational human minds, is indicative and revelatory of God by his purpose. If it is indicative of God, then it is revelatory of God by his purpose. Because if God is the creator and something indicates something, it would be because of his purpose. So whatever is indicative of God is revelatory of God by his purpose. So if somebody says, well, I don't say it's indicative of God, say, good. Then what you now have is a brute fact, and everything would be brute facts. In other words, whatever you believe in part or in whole, there's no underlying reason why anything is. Now, somebody may say, and I've even actually heard a Christian apologist make this stupid remark. One doesn't have to know what the absolute is in order for the absolute to do what it does. I actually heard a Christian apologist say this stupid remark. I mean, it's colossally stupid. Because you see, if you don't know what the absolute is, to speak of. So the one reason how you know God exists, one way among a collective reason why God makes you to know that he exists, is because you're a rational, conscious being. And if you are truly a rational, conscious being, the only way that that could be is because it was gifted to you by what is ultimate is a rational, conscious being. Now, if somebody says, what's the argument for that? It means they're not accepting that scenario and that there must be some plausible, logical, rational basis to account for human individual rationality that is ultimately derived from what is fundamentally the non-rational. Well, how does that work? How does something become its opposite? How does the non-rational over time become the rational? Okay,
I understand. I'm trying to follow you. It's I don't
it's
think
very simple.
I understand what you're saying.
Don't worry about what you don't understand. Okay, just keep coming back and listening to our conversations and our debates.
Thank you. That's what I would like to do, and I appreciate you letting me do it.
Yeah, just keep on coming back, take notes. If you hear something you don't agree with, or if you hear something that you don't understand, write it down. I perfectly understand the way that I phrase things. Sometimes people don't quite understand it. It's not that I'm trying to be obscure or, invoke philosophy speak. I'm trying to be clear as to what I'm saying because I'm talking to a wide variety of people from different backgrounds, different intellects, IQs, educations. Okay? So the bottom line is here your own self-reflectiveness that you are a conscious, rational being, okay, will either be a virtue that what is ultimate is a conscious, rational mind, God, and he's endowed you to be like himself, or else your mental states that you're self-reflective in consciousness, it doesn't mean anything. And even if you try to posit, well, we're just all a product of a large ocean of fluctuating quantum energy that erupts into virtual particles, and after billions of years, poof, we're here through a la evolution, that still wouldn't make you a rational being. And the theory of evolution does not give a rational defense for human beings being rational. Okay.
I appreciate you talking with me. I really do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for coming by. Keep coming back. So God has given you a multitude of reasons, everything you come into contact, that he exists. And if we reject that, then there's no reason to believe in anything.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Georges, come up.
It was very cordial.
Yeah, he's had a little bit of a nervous guy, but he's one of these atheists who is vastly more honest than your average atheist.
Very kind, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't. He doesn't want to believe in God because of the culpability factor, but he hasn't sunk to the depravity of all these atheist cliches and being deceptive. Okay,
Teaching lesson.
He's very good.
yeah. Well, like I said, being an atheist is on a spectrum of being deceptive. Okay, all atheists are deceptive, including that gentleman. Okay, he's deceptive to himself because he knows God exists. Okay, but he's vastly less deceptive than your average atheist that we run into on Discord.
Hey, at least you have the balls to come up and speak, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And, he made it very clear to me that he felt a bit uncomfortable, that he was in a little bit out of his league. And, I'm not going to beat him over the head. I will explain the position to him, and I'll go through it, like I'm a community college professor, tongue-in-cheek, and I'm not going to browbeat him. But if we get one of these in-your-face atheists, you know what? I'm gonna bring out the hammer and the claw and the bat, and you're going to get everything that you deserve.
And like how Matt Yester says, God, he tells me God has a gift of repentance, and he has, and then because he.
Well, I take the position that everyone can repent through the common grace of the convicting power of the Holy Spirit. Matt differs. Matt believes that repentance can only be exercised by those whom God irresistibly draws and unconditionally and individually selects. Okay, so there's a difference in view about the nature of the gift of repentance. We both believe in the gift of repentance, but there's a difference. Go ahead, Georges. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, guys. So, Darth, I have a quick question, actually. I thought about it for a while, and I tried to look for an answer, but I didn't find anything clear enough to me to understand. So, the question is, it's actually in the seeking for purpose kind of search. So, my question is, why did God create us?
To glorify Himself.
Can you elaborate a little more?
Yeah, because when God is glorified, we have a completely accurate state of things. Okay, and when God creates beings that are like Himself, that are minds, and that glorifies Him, that also puts us in a position of being in a place of blessing and love. Okay. When God creates human beings to glorify them, when we glorify God, we are in a truly blissful state. Okay? Both before the fall and after the recreation, after Judgment Day, when we glorify God, we're in a complete state of happiness and accuracy in terms of our mental outlook. Not to glorify God is to one degree or another to be irrational. When Satan decided that he was not going to honor God's autonomy, and Satan said, I will be like the Most High, I will ascend to the throne of heaven, he thought he was pursuing a path of rationality, which he knew better wasn't, but he decided to fool himself. And he actually went into a state that was not blissful. Right? So, see, when we human beings hear about somebody glorifying themselves, we're prone to thinking narcissism, but God can't be narcissistic. If something glorifies God, it's just simply an accurate appraisal and representation of everything that God is. Okay?
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Let me just say this before I have a Joe Biden moment. Just keep that thought, okay? I don't want to be interrupted, but imagine we have somebody who is extremely skilled at producing certain masterpieces, okay? And it took a lifetime of work for them to develop the mental and the behavioral talent and skill to produce whatever you want to imagine is of just artistic and technical beauty. Okay? And some moron comes along and is disparaging what this person has done. Okay? Like for example, do you know who Norman Rockwell was?
Not really, no.
Okay, Norman Rockwell was an extremely famous American painter who used to paint for the Saturday Evening Post. And all of his paintings, which were very large, ended up as the covers of the Saturday Evening Post. And they were almost photorealistic. And he's renowned in America as being somebody who is an immense American treasure and painter. You could think of maybe some of the great European painters. Even Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Renoir. I mean, they're just great painters, right? And suppose some person comes along and just speaks derogatorily or disparagingly of their great talent and artwork, right? You would consider them a fool, but they don't consider themselves a fool when they have contempt for certain great works of art that exhibit great intellect, skill, and talent and beauty. Well, that's the same thing with God. When we glorify God, we're recognizing for God for precisely what He is. Okay?
Okay, so I actually thought of that answer, and I was talking to one of the servants in the church, and he gave me that answer. But when I thought about it a little more, so here's the thing: God is all glorious even before creation, even before everything.
Right.
Amen.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, to give that answer that He created us to glorify Himself.
Yeah, it's paradoxical.
It is, to be honest. I didn't want to use that word, so.
No, that's perfectly fine. There are actually great theologians who use that as well. It's something that is paradoxical to us.
What does that mean again? I don't have heard of
A paradox is something from our limited human understanding and perspective whereby we might conclude that it is a real contradiction, but it isn't. Okay? It seems contradictory due to our limited understanding.
Oh, well put, yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so technically we can say we cannot fully understand that part, since God is all glorious since before creation, since before time.
Well, let me just say this. If we are going to mentally appropriate what God is in part, because we can't do it in whole, okay? Because we would have to be God to do that. The only way that we can properly and rationally appropriate what God is by virtue of God taking the initiative to disclose what He is to us in a way that we can comprehend it. Okay? So if we have a correct understanding of God, and that understanding glorifies God, okay? The only way that this can be done is God has to enable us and impart that to us. Okay? Because the only alternative is simply to appeal to the figment of our own imagination. You see, in the biblical view, knowledge of anything at all is ultimately rooted in the creative power and revelatory actions of God. There isn't anything that can be known that God doesn't first know because He's the creator.
Amen.
Okay? So if we're going to glorify God, God is going to have to communicate that to us directly and indirectly.
Okay, so...
But unbelievers don't like that. One thing that's characteristic of unbelievers is that they're bitter clingers to the notion that they can practice autonomous reasoning, that their reasoning exists and doesn't entirely and completely derive and depend upon God. Okay? They may acknowledge God for the sake of discussion, but they are still thinking that they are in some way and in some sense autonomous. Okay? We have to understand that everything that we are, even when I just held up my left hand and I'm looking at my left pinky, right? In order for me to even do that, God has to create a world and sustain a world so that I can do that, and then how I can experience and then have knowledge of my left pinky. Right? But the unbeliever doesn't want to acknowledge God. Why? Because they're bitter, they're their own autonomy. To acknowledge God is to acknowledge the autonomy of the mind of God. Not to acknowledge God is to acknowledge the autonomy of the human mind, which is a delusion.
Okay, so here's
It's
the
a
thing.
truly dichotomous situation.
I understand that part, but in the God's worldview, we see everything as the creation of God, even logic, even the laws of physics, even everything in the universe is the creation of God. And since God created logic, it doesn't make sense to me, from the way you explained it, that while trying to understand why God created us, we end up in a contradiction. Like God is all glorious since the beginning of time, since
You're not understanding because you see, you're not understanding. It's because you're not omniscient. I'm not omniscient. So there are certain things that are apparent contradictions to us. Okay?
Yeah, that we can't understand.
Look, let me just give you a simple analogy. I remember teaching somebody many years ago, the business that I was involved with. I had to teach them a particular easy to master skill dealing with certain machinery, okay? And I said to the individual, put your hand on it, and it was spinning at a high rate per minute. They put your hand over it, and I said, just gently start squeezing it. And the person refused to do that because they thought they were going to get severely injured, okay? So they thought that them squeezing it was incompatible with safety. But I knew better because of my training and my experience that with this particular mechanical device, it was a type of a lathe, okay? That while the lathe is spinning, there's a thing called a chuck. That when you put your hand over the chuck while it's spinning, if you just slowly start squeezing on it when the power is turned off, it will provide a little bit of friction and heat, not enough to burn you, and it will slow it down. Okay? But this person didn't have the same knowledge and experience that I did, so they thought that squeezing it was incompatible with safety, but it wasn't incompatible with safety. They were operating off of not enough information about what was safe. Okay? So there are certain things that God may communicate to us that we can only know. We can only know because God creates a world by which we can know these things. And some of these things may seem to us to be a contradiction, but from God's point of view, they're not. From our point of view, somebody may declare they're a contradiction when in fact they're a paradox. Okay?
Yeah, but doesn't that limit and actually puts a cap on what we understand?
Yes, it does.
About God.
Look, if you look in logic and philosophy, there are a number of paradoxes that both philosophers, in ancient times and even modern times, have come up with certain paradoxes, and they're called paradoxes.
Am I breaking up, or he is?
He broke up.
Okay, yeah, I can hear.
Create a rock so big that it can't.
There's something wrong with your mic.
Okay, can God create a rock so big that he can't lift it?
I mean, any answer to that is wrong. if you said yes, then
Okay,
God
okay.
can't.
Okay, I switched my understanding. Is that a coherent question? Can God create a rock so big that he can't lift it?
That's a paradox.
Right, but you see, but there are atheists who pose that question and they think that either one produces a contradiction, but it doesn't. The paradox is only viable until you investigate further. When you investigate further, it's not a real contradiction. It's a paradox because what is unforeseen is the incoherency of the question. Okay? There are some things that are paradoxical to us that we will not be able to unravel this side of the grave. Some paradoxes we may be permitted by God to unravel. Okay? Like the concept of the Trinity is paradoxical to people. Okay? How is it that God is 3 in 1?
Yeah, some people say that's polytheism.
Yeah. Well, these are people who've never even read a theology book.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I don't think the Trinity.
I've even had atheists who their hobby is to study philosophy books, and because they've never read any theology books, they make just stupid statements that they think is a contradiction when it's not. Like they'll say, "Well, can God create a human being who has agency but who can't sin?" And we'll say, "Well, no, that would be a contradiction." They go, "Well, how is there going to be anybody in heaven, okay, when they don't sin anymore?" And then what they think is they have a gotcha for Christians, but they actually don't, because if they understood biblical theology, what they understand is after Judgment Day, everybody who remains in heaven will have voluntarily turned to God to make their allegiance to God permanent. So when we are in heaven after Judgment Day, we will not be able to sin because God has permanentized our agency by which we wanted to not be disloyal, disobedient to God ever again. But you see, that's a simplification of what you will find in theological works on anthropology and the doctrine of salvation. But since they're not well read in this, they stupidly think there's a contradiction there when we say, well, God can't make somebody who's an agent who can't sin. And then they apply that to the residents in heaven after Judgment Day. So they think it's a contradiction, but it's not. It's paradoxical. And the reason why it's a paradox is because they're imbeciles when it comes to biblical theology. Because they would realize these are not two situations that are analogous. One is a human being at the outset who is an agent, who can't sin. The other one is a person who is an agent, who then God permanentizes their expression, that God make them permanently not sin. So, for example, if Adam and Eve had not eaten of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, God could have made permanent their loyalty to God and their disposition toward God when they ate of the tree of life. But that didn't happen. The point I'm trying to make to you is sometimes some things may be paradoxical due to a lack of information from our side of things, but not from God's.
Okay, but how can I know for certain if there's a cap to what I can understand?
How can you know for certain what?
But like everything, I mean, there is.
For certain, what do you mean? Well,
okay, go ahead. I'm trying to explain, but go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, we are in search of. I mean, I wouldn't say in search of God, but in search of the truth that God reveals to us.
Oh, how can you know anything at all?
Well, yes. I mean, there is a cap on our head.
It's very simple. Because if God didn't exist, there would be no knowledge.
But God exists.
That's right. And so, because we're in God's world, He has made us to know some things. Okay. Now, in this world, in the fallen state between the time Adam and Eve sinned and before Judgment Day, within God's redemptive plan of history, He has allowed human beings, even believers, to be deceived about some things. But He has not created a world by which we can be deceived about everything. Okay?
That's not my point. Maybe I couldn't explain it pretty well. So we are, like, in life we are to glorify God. I mean, that's what I understood from you, like, when I first asked the question. But now I also understand from what you said that we're capped at some point. That's our limitation. That's the highest that we can get. There's some stuff that we could never understand or comprehend. It's
okay. So can you, if you have a question, a disagreement, or an objection, can you express it in one or two clear sentences?
I highly doubt it, to be honest.
Because I'm not understanding it. Well, you know what? When it comes to you, just write it down, and the next time you see me on, just throw it at me. You know.
Well, sounds like a deal. Thank you so much, Darth.
Okay. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I'm not a know-it-all. I'm extremely opinionated, right? And people don't like that. Well, too bad. No, I'm not saying that's true of you. I'm saying that of my critics. I'm not troubled by what I don't know. I am blown away that within the last 10 years of my Christian life, how God has made it clear to me a prayer which, through my own lack of diligence in years past, I would have learned quicker than when I learned the last 10 years about certain things. Like, I remember asking, well, God, how can I know that you're really there? Okay? And over the last 10 years of studying apologetics, it's made clear to me that there's no alternative. Okay? To even contemplate that I am in possession of any kind of reason or intelligibility, then this is an absolute indicator that God exists. Deny this, and you're going to have to explain how anything can be intelligible or rational in any way if it is not indicative and revelatory of God. Like people, I used to say, well, how can we know that Christianity is true? And after reading one theologian, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's because the internal composition of the Christian worldview is such that it is indispensable in terms of its model of reality, that without it, you're not going to have truth, reason, or intelligibility. Truth, reason, intelligibility will be non-existence and will be indefensible.
You couldn't know any.
You couldn't know anything.
I like how fun.
Yeah. So this is how we can know that Jesus Christ is who He said He was, because when we look at His composite identity claims that are in the New Testament, it is such that it is a model of reality that is indispensable. Now, if somebody rejects that, then they are positing in their mind that it is dispensable. Good, then what system are you operating from? What is it that imposes that there's identity and an identity over time? Is there something that imposes the realness of continuity amongst the discontinuity of life? Is there something that imposes the regularity of existence as opposed to it's an illusion?
It's true, Darth, because when you ask that question, people will look at you and look at me and say, I like I'm the same person. Like I like from last week, and then you asked this question, and philosophers had how should I say it deeply with trouble and
Well, I just tell them, listen, we don't have a choice. You don't have an alternative. The alternative to believing in God's self-disclosure and revelation of himself in creation and through human history, culminating in the person of Jesus Christ and his apostles, is a world of absurdity. Now, unbelievers will laugh at this because they deny God, they deny the Christian worldview, yet they order pizza on Friday night with pepperoni and sausage. But unfortunately, their system is not coherent. Because if you press them on the system, then there's nothing that dictates that what pepperoni is, or sausage, or cheese, or tomato sauce, or dough, or a brick oven.
Oh, it's true. But it's funny. It's funny, but it's true.
No, it is. I don't disagree. It's just the way Darth phrases things is hilarious to me.
It's true.
Well, that makes me happy that I amuse certain people. I do. To be perfectly honest, sometimes I do express things to add humor of it. I just think the unbeliever system position is just so ridiculous. And now that I've seen the richer truths within the Bible after studying, Van Til's writings, although I'm not done yet, but reading some of this stuff, it's like, wow, the ramifications and implications that I learned by reading Van Til and then going back and say, yeah, this has been in the Bible all along. We just didn't. We weren't focusing and concentrating on what God says is true, and what are the ramifications if it's not true? Okay.
Yeah, it's like, how do you know you're the same person from last week or yesterday?
Exactly.
The changes going on. Otherwise, you just be a experience.
The unbeliever thinks it's perverse to even ask such a question. What they think is perverse is that we are challenging their fundamental parameters that they believe and assert exist without reference to God.
Also, you could say like you stayed at a hotel and you wake up the next day. How do you know you're that same person with the changes happening? And it goes more maybe deeper philosophical. And
they could cavalierly just say, well, I'm just going to believe what is apparent until a defeater is presented. Okay. Yeah. Well, what if that's not true?
Yeah.
All right. Look, they want all the goodies that God has made and that God sustains, but they don't want to thank God. They're like these slobs. Like there are these two slobs, these nihilistic atheists, who would go into restaurant after restaurant over successive days, order expensive food, and then place a fake bug in the food, and then try to make a scene like they get out of it. But one time they got caught because the restaurateur had cameras, and he exposed these two slobs. Okay. And the atheists are just like these two slobs. And by the way, I'm talking about real people. Right. Have to be real people that have to be atheists.
They're like cockroaches. They're like cockroaches.
Yeah. And so what they want to do is they want to go into these restaurants, partake of the cuisine, the cooking, without paying for it. Well, when unbelievers order pepperoni and sausage pizza, or they smile at their dog, or whatever they do, they want to enjoy all the goodies that God has made without acknowledging God. And when they say, oh, no, I'm not doing that, you just haven't proven you're God. Say, good, what proved to you that these things possess actuality and intelligibility in a God-free world? What proved that?
And then they go, "You're shifting the burden to prove." You know. So they they're like people who sneak into Disneyland or some other, type of entertainment facility without paying the entrance fee.
Well, hey, you know what? Since they are cockroaches and they are ants alike, they just need the classic spray, of Raid or Hot Shot, and you know what?
Well, let me just say this: they're cockroaches in the sense that they, by their own self-chosen attitude, they're cockroaches. But you know what? They're sinners before a guilty God, just like you and I, and they need to come to repentance, just like we needed to come to repentance. Okay?
Amen.
We're just reformed cockroaches.
Yeah, man.
Okay?
Amen.
Wicked.
I agree.
These are just recalcitrant, unrepentant cockroaches.
Oh,
they're the worst of the worst. They're the dirtiest of the dirtiest. Let's just say that word.
Well, when we're talking about the usual suspects, and there are several dozen of them on Clubhouse and Discord and formerly Google Plus, it's not just they're defiant against God and atheists, it's that they behave in a very reprehensible fashion in terms of their persistent trolling and lying to people and being purposely obscene and perverse. Okay? Not like that last atheist we had in here who, he had a sense of contrition and that he wanted to believe. He wasn't contemptible. By the way, I have the idiot box on in front of me, and I'm watching a commercial. Does it ever cross your mind? You look at the commercial and you say to yourself, "Wow, that was a good choice for casting a commercial," and then you'll see someone else. You go, "Wow, how did that other person get cast in the commercial?"
Oh, I know.
You look at one human being and you say, "Wow, that's a good-looking person," and then you see another person, you go, "Ooh, what are they doing in the commercial?"
No. Have you ever seen that commercial, Darth? It's it's a black guy in front of it, and he goes and he says in the commercial, "Stop it, get some help." That should be the atheist helpline commercial. So 1-800 get saved. It should be the guy in the commercial should be for atheists. Stop it, get some help.
Yeah, get some help. We're here to help you.
That would be
legalism, did it came from the Jewish priests, Doris, or the Old Testament?
I had said.
Awesome.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because I think a few days ago, I was in a live stream and this lady, and because she used to be legalism, and is it from the Jewish priests or Old Testament or something?
My connection just went out, so I didn't hear anything you said.
The Old Testament, the Jewish priests, they used to be the extreme end, maybe the legalism or something.
No, legalism is just setting up rules for the sake of rules, and then just that indiscriminate rule keeping somehow makes you righteous. But that's not the same thing. Like, for example, there's an instance where a young Christian woman was thinking about getting married in a particular Bible-believing church, but referred to the church as legalistic because the church had a rule that if you were going to be married in the church, you had to present to one of the church leaders what your wedding dress looked like. And the reason why this rule was imposed, because they had been burned in the past by some young women wearing inappropriate wedding dresses. Okay? But because the young woman in question wanted to be free to maybe wear a wedding dress that was more revealing,
than what the church felt was appropriate. She concluded that the church was being legalistic, okay, because she couldn't find a Bible verse that says, you can't wear a certain kind of wedding dress, okay? But the same person would not say, if a man shows up wearing a woman's dress in church, that individual would not have regarded that the church was being legalistic, because there's no rule in the New Testament that says a man can't wear a dress.
Yeah,
okay? So legalism is the idea of laying down rules that are in some way arbitrary, and that by keeping these arbitrary rules, that you're advancing, you're going to receive more grace and things like that.
Because when I heard people, this lady would say, "Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that," and mention about Pharisees and Sadducees, and they legalistic and all this.
Well, more often than not, when you hear the charge of legalism, usually it's an inaccurate designation. Now, is it always an inaccurate designation? No, but it usually is. It means that somebody has a principle or rule that another person doesn't agree with, and so they charge them with legalism. But it's not necessarily legalism.
Okay, yeah, you said not necessarily. Okay, yeah.
See, in people's minds, legalism is setting up some rule that they can't find chapter and verse for. But you see, there are certain principles or rules that, let's say, a Christian family or a church might follow that can be found in principle, but not necessary in specificity in the New Testament or the Bible. Okay?
Oh, in principle, okay. Oh.
Yeah. Let's take, for example, the issue of idol meat in Romans and in 1 Corinthians, right? Where it talks about the issue of eating idol meat. Paul made it very clear that there's nothing intrinsically wrong with going to the marketplace where there's meat, and some of the meat is at a discount, let's say, but it turns out that you find out that it had been sacrificed to idols, snuck out the back door, and then sold at a discount in the marketplace. Paul said, we know that idols are nothing. It's just meat, okay? Now, but other Christians may say, no, you should not be buying that meat because it's offered to demons, all right? But Paul talks about the issue that although it's not intrinsically wrong, we shouldn't cause an unnecessary offense or a stumbling block to other believers. So he lays down a principle that we shouldn't be eating idol meat, but it's not because it would be intrinsically evil to chew on the meat and swallow it and digest it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Okay. But somebody might come along and say, well, Paul is being, legalistic. Well, no, he wasn't. He's talking about a principle.
Can it be said that the Jewish leaders and priests at that time, the Old Testament,
they had a whole bunch of traditions that they added that people had to follow if they were going to be considered righteous or right with God, that couldn't really be justified either in specificity or principle out of the Old Testament. And that's what originates the notion of legalism. Yeah, go ahead.
Is Sadducees, are they priests too, or?
No, the Pharisees and the Sadducees were religious leaders of different theological persuasions. The priests were the one who served in the temple offering sacrifices. So the Sadducees and the Pharisees would be equivalent to our modern day religious clergy. Okay? Pastors, ministers, things like that. The Sadducees were more liberal than the non-Sadducees. Okay? So you had different religious leaders that were of different theological persuasions. Okay, some people believed that there was going to be a literal resurrection after the dead, and others didn't. So the Sadducees tended to be much more liberal than the other Pharisees, who were not. I'm trying to remember. I'm rusty on this one. The opposite of the Sadducees were the. I'm trying to remember what their name was. I can't remember off the top of my head.
No problem.
Yeah, like some of the liberal clergymen thought you could divorce your wife for any reason, and then the conservative Pharisees believed that you could only divorce and remarry for adultery.
Okay. They were Jewish, right? The Sadducees.
Yes, the Sadducees and the Pharisees were the religious clergy who were of differing theological persuasion.
Okay, yeah, because it just reminds me of Jewish customs. Yeah,
You know, if you go to Grace to You, I think MacArthur has some excellent studies on the nature of the Sadducees and the Pharisees. You can even look up if you go to my Google Drive in the Bible reference folder, there's a number of Bible encyclopedias and dictionaries in there. And if you look up Pharisees and Sadducees, it'll give you a very good detailing of what they believed, what they practiced, what they were like.
Oh yeah, I wanna.
There's a good number of Bible dictionaries within the Bible reference folder on my Google Drive.
Okay, yeah.
I gotta check that out.
I brought it up because someone brought it up. I'm like, okay, let's.
Yeah, I recommend anybody, if you have space on your computer, download it. You know, because if I drop dead, I renew that every year.
Oh.
I renew that every year at the end of December. So if I drop dead and I don't renew it, it's going to be gone. You know. So hey, I'm 61, babe. I could drop dead of a heart attack tonight when I go to sleep.
I know.
You know, I could wake up in the middle of the night, leave my cable TV on, and all of a sudden see the face of Rosie O'Donnell, and I'm dead.
Oh my God!
You know?
Classic.
Yeah.
No, you know. I would rather see the face of Rosie O'Donnell than Herman Munster. Okay, if you die and you're dead watching the Munster,
Fred Gwynn was just amazing as Herman Munster. He really was. I don't think he gets the credit he did. He just delivered you really believed that he had this childlike mind in this monster body. He was just so childlike.
That's why I picked it for Patrick Voss.
Yeah. Patrick Voss, a.k.a. Herman Munster.
Perfect.
Now, if you guys don't know who Herman Munster is, you're missing out.
I have no idea. Sounds fun.
Herman Munster is funny stuff.
Oh, if he goes to a Halloween party this year, that's who he should be. And they're going to be like, who are you? I'm Herman Munster.
Well, he's gone on record claiming that he's on some type of disability or waiting for disability to kick in.
Really? That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Look, I just want to make a quick point real quick. He believed when I did the whole J-Mike controversy, he was so adamant on defending me and saying that I was really J-Mike, and it was clearly not J-Mike. And he knew who J-Mike was.
That was so funny.
And Tom Rabbit, who was not the smartest person, even knew. And
no, but look, some of us are better at voice recognition than others. There are certain individuals in my past who I will not talk to, who will come back on again. And if I don't recognize another's name, I don't recognize their voice. Some people I recognize, some I don't. You know, some people are better than others. But they were. Yeah, he just would not admit that he got trolled.
I know. Then his ego blew up, and then he got super pissed off, and he threatened to sue Tom Rabbit, supposedly.
That's just ridiculous, you know.
And that's why he will no longer speak to me. He claims that ever since I did that, he won't speak to me. So he's blocked me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is a guy who said that he would debate me on a platform where I did have moderation powers, yet he would continue to either block me, or when I would come up on stage, he would verbally abuse me and then kick me back to the stage when he had full moderating powers. Okay.
I'm surprised you would want to debate. Like you're out of his league when it comes to debating.
Look, I'm not trying to be mean. I don't think that he's necessarily a stupid person in his private life, but when it comes to his philosophical and theological depth, he's an idiot when it comes to atheism.
No. I'm not making fun of him. I wish him the best. It's just, I'm talking.
Oh, I do too. I don't wish anything bad on him. By the way, if we have any unbelievers who want to challenge the Christian worldview, if you think Christianity is not reasonable to believe in, that's one thing that really blew me away, which I think I always knew in seed or kernel form, but Van Til just drove it home, that of the impossibility of the contrary when it comes to the Christian worldview, that when we look at its composite attribute set in terms of a complete worldview and the God of the Bible, that deny this framework, metaphysic, you're now in a realm where you can't ground anything. This is Van Til has always been falsely representative of claiming unbelievers can't know anything, and Van Til was very clear. He said unbelievers can't know anything if their system was true. He's made the point that unbelievers can know and will continue through rigorous study of God's world, learn things about God's world, even though they will not acknowledge.
What happened to Doris?
I have no idea. Sometimes he does that. Sometimes he just leaves rooms. Just like that. And he made you a mod.
I just pinged
He
her
does
back.
that sometimes.
I don't know if I should shut this down or you wanna just.
I mean, I need to go take a shower and stuff, so I mean,
Yeah,
I was gonna leave it.
Yeah, I guess I'll shut this down, but this is a good.
Yeah, I like
good
this is good.
questions. I try to ask questions and make sure I get a better understanding of scripture and just because I don't like to waste time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Darth. Wait, why'd you leave?
My Clubhouse crashed on my phone.
Oh, okay, gotcha. We're like, no, Darth, don't go.
I don't know what.
No, it crashed.
I have to ask you, Darth, why do you just abruptly jump off the planet sometimes when you just leave out of nowhere?
Because I have certain interruptions or something I need to take care of immediately.
Okay.
Well, to be perfectly honest, it's just because I hate you.
Yeah. And you're a racist?
You and Patrick Voss. It's because you're of a darker persuasion and Patrick Voss is green tinted skin like Herman Munster.
Yes.
It's so funny because I have a good number of friends and acquaintances that are black and Christians on Discord, so.
Yeah.
Look, all they're simply doing is this is a Saul Alinsky tactic of taking isolated incidences that they misrepresent in order to, slander and defame me that I'm racist, which is ridiculous. And then you get then Saul Alinsky's dead. Yeah, Saul Alinsky was a thug who used to work for the mafia in Chicago, but then he found out that it would be lucrative to get into politics, and he wrote a book called Rules for Radicals that the leftists, like Hillary Clinton, I think, did a college paper on him. Saul Alinsky was a big influence on Barack Obama. What should I say? And in the book Rules for Radicals, which is dedicated to Satan or Lucifer, he said you just slander and defame your opponent, you know. Right? Just slander, slander, slander.
Oh yeah, like what they do Trump as just oh man.
Well, that's all they're left with.
Yeah.
You know, they've stopped with the Darth is a meanie and Darth is an abusive person. Now they've moved on to saying, oh, Darth's a racist. I mean, I kid you not, because I did a parody of Kamala Harris's name, that I called her Camel Hair, which is a parody on her name. They actually said that this was a racist comment. You ready for this? It's because she's a woman of color, and women of color have less than straight hair. If you ever look at Kamala Harris, she has straight hair. Okay.
I think it's short too.
Yeah, black women tend to have more coarse hair. There's nothing coarse about her hair at all.
No, yeah.
No, not at all. But you see how the bastardization of logic, where you have women of color, where some women of color can have very curly or coarse hair. Okay.
Long.
But Kamala Harris, you might say her mother is of Indian descent, and I think her father is half black and half, I think, Irish. And so what I want to say is, well, she's a woman of color. Right? But you see, she has completely straight hair. Right?
He's one of the presidents.
I mean, any idiot can see that saying camel hair is a parody of Kamala Harris, right? But they want to use anything as, you know, that I'm racist, like, or one moron, okay, who happened to be black but was behaving like a child without a father. And I said to him, what was it like growing up without a father? Which I've said to any number of people over the years when they behave in an absolute reprehensible fashion. Okay, it has nothing to do with what their skin color is, but they want to turn it into a racist thing because they don't care. Look, these people slander the God of the Bible. They slander Jesus Christ, so we shouldn't be surprised that they slander Christians.
Well, of course, Jesus did say, if they hate you, they hate me. So,
yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, Darth, I heard that you were gonna debate Dan Barker. I saw that there was a video posted a while ago that you were going to debate him, and he never
spoke
showed.
to Dan Barker, and he agreed that we could have a conversation, but he hasn't shown up regularly enough for that to take place.
If that ever happens, I'm going to be very upset at you if you do not send me the message to the room. I have to be there. That I have to see.
Well, it's going to be recorded if it happens.
I gotta be there as one of the.
Yeah, I think that he's not really going to stand up very well. You know.
Oh, of course not. I think
I've listened to his debates. Okay. He's a good debater in the sense that he knows he has the gift of gab and he has his little script memorized. But yeah. But I don't think he can really, withstand biblical presuppositional questions when they're asked in a very refined way and they're represented philosophically.
Hey, did you hear what he said when he went back, I think 6 years ago, he was on Fox News, and he just went off the charts. Oh, the Bible is awful, God's an asshole, he tears up baby parts. Yeah, this is what he says. He was on Fox News.
Well, this is a guy. Wait, if he said that, which is perfectly consistent. Okay, please do send me the link. I would like to see that. But this is a guy who has categorically stated that abortion, okay, at any time, is a blessing. Okay, and in fact, listen to this.
I wish that scumbag would debate me on abortion.
I would love to see that. Dan Barker. His late mother-in-law and Ann Gaylor, I think her name was. The daughter has the same name but a different second name. But his mother-in-law started two organizations. Okay, one was the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and the other one was an organization that she either started or she ran it. They collected and raised money so that women could pay to have abortions to kill their unborn babies. And this woman, Ann Gaylor, herself, even I think she wrote about it, saying that abortion, as far as we call it, baby killing, was a blessing. Dan himself has gone on record as saying that abortion is a blessing. So he wholeheartedly approves of killing of the unborn, right? But he turns around and said, because God is God, and decides to give anybody an early departure, including babies, that this is somehow awful. But this is the same guy who says that abortion is a blessing. I mean, this is complete hypocrisy and inconsistency.
Oh god.
I know. Yeah, I'll send you the clip. I think. Do you know who Tucker is on Fox News? I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Tucker Carlson?
Yeah.
Oh, I
He
know.
was on.
Of course I know who he is.
Okay. That's who he was debating with. He just went on a rampage about how God's an asshole.
I would love to see that. Okay.
Me too.
Here, you know what? I'll post it let me go find it and then I'll post
But
it.
you gotta understand, Dan Barker is a unique person in that he joined many years ago. He met his wife, Ann Gaylor, the daughter and the mother have the same name, except I keep on forgetting what was her name. I think it's Ann Laurie Gaylor is the daughter. I could be mistaken, but anyway, he met his current wife, who they're both co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and so he joined up with them to work and run the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Pretty good gig for an atheist, where you get paid to be an atheist. Right? They even have a kind of wax figurine of Charles Darwin in their Freedom from Religion Foundation headquarters.
All right.
Charles Darwin. I don't know.
Oh, we all love Charles Darwin.
That might as well be what it is. This is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin now.
Well, we could call it the cult of Charles Darwin, because even Richard Dawkins acknowledges that atheism was almost inconceivable before Darwin, but with Darwin, he's provided atheists with intellectual fulfillment. Now, I say this all the time, and I'll say it again. Evolution per se doesn't ipso facto get you that there's no God, but it does provide the fertile retrodictive soil out of which atheism flourishes.
That's the best.
And another kind of unbelief. Yeah.
Here, I'm trying to find that clip and then I'll post it up top.
That commercial's on again that I was talking about earlier. Do you ever notice that you don't see many ugly people proliferating in a lot of commercials? Occasionally you see an Anglo-American. I think ugly people are discriminated against when it comes to commercials and even TV and movies. They have ugly people.
Of course.
And I think the Anglo-Americans are a minority that are not representative. Maybe they should add that to the LGBTQ. It could be LGBTQU, ugly.
You
gotta add them.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, does anybody want to deny that there are people that are ugly?
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course there's people that are ugly.
And
but I would say... Go on.
Yeah, I mean, so they should add that to the LGBTQ, alphabet soup. So the LGBTQU, Anglo-Americans, UAs.
Yeah, I think that's pretty ugly. I
What
definitely
would
agree.
you say?
By the way, I expect you to get me that link of Dan Barker. I definitely want to see that.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now. Hold on.
Darth, what would you say to an atheist who tried to use this against you in this way? Like, who are you to say people are ugly? Don't you believe that all people are made in God's image? How would you say that?
Because I purposely do that tongue in cheek. Because then they're going to turn right around and repeat what I say. Darth's against ugly people, to making themselves look like fools. Okay. It's tongue in cheek. It's just like when Rush Limbaugh used to do it. He used to refer to ugly Americans are not equally represented in the American politic.
Okay, so this is the thing. So this came out like 6-7 years ago, and it was about him shutting down a Bible school. And so Tucker Carlson's arguing with him on it. Just watch it; it's hilarious, and he just explodes, and he's unhinged on the way his response.
So you're sending me the link?
No, it's literally I pinned it up the top. You can see it. Just click on it.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god.
Okay, let me just. Okay, let me click on that. Okay, go to link. Okay.
And play it through your microphone.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't do that on my phone.
You can't?
Oh, okay.
No, I would have to look. I have to open up my computer and then send a link to my.
Here,
computer.
I'm on my computer. I'm on my computer right now. Here, hold on a second.
Okay, let's see.
Atheists. Shut. Hold on one second.
I could do it because I have the ability to copy and paste from my phone to my laptop because it's an Apple. But I'm just too lazy right now.
Yeah, we know how much you're inspired by Apple, Darth. We know how much you're in love with Apple.
I know. Mm-hmm. Watch out. Oh, Safari could not open the page because the server stopped responding. Okay.
All right, here, I'm going to put it on speaker. Tell me if you guys can hear it. Hold on one second.
Okay.
This came out 5 years ago. Just hold on. There's a commercial. 1 second here. All right. Can you guys hear it all right?
I can't hear anything, dude.
No.
All right, hold on 1 second.
I'm trying to load the link and it's not loading in my browser.
I can do it on my end quite easily. Hold on.
Say what?
I can do it on my end quite easily.
Okay, do it on yours because it's not. Because
give me a second.
How do you even do that? I mean, I'm just playing it through YouTube.
Look, I'm trying to load it within Clubhouse on the browser, and I copied the link and posted to my browser, and both of them won't load.
That's weird. Here, hold on 1 second, Darth. I'm going to send it to you, and you tell me if you can get it.
I'm about to load up right now.
Yeah, send it to me in a DM. It might be a glitch with the pin link. So
It's fine on my end. It's fine on my end.
Okay,
I'm playing it.
well, maybe it'll work in the, okay, I'm waiting for YouTube to load here.
Okay.
I could play it.
I'm having Wi-Fi problems right now.
I'm about to play it right now.
Okay, play it right now.
Yeah, I got good volume. It's pretty easy for me to play stuff through my microphone on my laptop.
Yeah. Do you have the MacBook? Is that what you have?
No, I've just got a standard Windows laptop with a mic. And I can
Okay,
play
well, I got a Dell computer. It's just not picking up on my mic. Here, just play it.
An elementary school in Bartlett, Tennessee has been forced to shut down a popular Bible club after receiving complaints from an anti-religion group. The Bible club at Altruria, I beg your pardon, elementary school, was optional and was held prior to normal school hours, but the Freedom From Religion Foundation threatened to sue, saying it was unconstitutional because the club was led by school district employees and was therefore, quote, really just religious instruction by public school officials. The club has been disbanded. Dan Barker is the co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and he joins us tonight. So you shut down a club for first graders studying the Bible. Do you feel good about that?
Yes, we do. In fact, we didn't shut it down. After getting the letter that we sent, the school itself looked at the legal precedent and looked at the reasoning, and they decided to stop the illegal Bible club being led by teachers in the public schools. So there is no threat of a lawsuit here. The school did the right thing.
Well, you bullied them into it. Bullied into them canceling a club for first graders. But what's the constitutional problem with this? School district employees have a right to express their views.
Well, Tucker, you know there's a difference between free speech and government speech. When those teachers are at the school, they are the government. And the children who go to that school, they look up to. They're told to respect those teachers, and the students do. But there are families who wish to protect their children from the depravity and the violence that's in the Bible, and they don't think the school should be taking sides on such a personal...
Okay, since when did leftists like this bastard care about parental sort of authority over their children?
Of course. What a liar. He would perfectly approve of the LGBT ideology being crammed down their throats, disregarding what parents want. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah. Play the rest of the clip. Just keep playing it. It gets worse.
Religious issue, and in fact, the Supreme Court has already addressed this issue.
Yes, it has, and not in the way that you suggest. This did not take place during school hours. They were not working in their capacity as teachers. Some people may not have liked it, but some people don't like a lot of things. That's different from being unconstitutional. People have a right to express their religious views. That's enshrined in the First Amendment.
Are you kidding me? He tried to shut down a club for first graders that was not even happening during school hours.
I know.
What a bastard, man!
That's what I'm saying.
This is what they're all about. Okay, notice how he mixes truth with falsehood.
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep going.
What's prohibited is a government establishment religion, as you know.
And so that class was a government establishment of religion, because those teachers were the teachers of those students in that school, on that property. If those teachers wanted to have a Bible study in their private homes on Saturday, that's America. That's wonderful. But for the teachers in the school, and the Supreme Court has ruled on this, saying that it's voluntary does not make it legal, especially in the elementary grades. The school did the right thing, and the school should be applauded for giving a lesson to the students about the importance of our Constitution and the importance of keeping state and church separate.
Such a liar. Aggressive interest groups with lawyers can force you to do what they want you to do, and that's an important lesson. I agree, because that's how America now runs, thanks to people like you. My question, though, is, would it have been okay with you if it had been an atheist group meeting with teachers?
Exactly.
Well, don't blame us. You should blame the Supreme Court, because these issues have already been decided by the Constitution back in 1948.
That's not true.
Yes, it is true.
Okay.
Yes, it is. If you would read our letter, Tucker.
I have read your letter, and I disagree with your interpretation of it. But let me just get back to the question I just asked. Would it have been okay with you if an atheist club was meeting off hours on a voluntary basis at the school?
If it was led by students, no, we would protest that just as well. And you can
liar, you're lying through your teeth. Wow. This guy's lying through
And
his
they
teeth.
say what we believe, what we are. They claim that we're a cult. If this doesn't scream a cult, I don't know what else does.
Atheist teachers,
You have to understand.
having a Bible club, teaching the children how horrible that brutal alpha God is in the Bible, who threatens violence and fire, and a Jesus who talked about being slaves and gouging out body parts.
Slow down.
You hear him?
Slow down.
Wait a minute.
Why should I slow down? Because you're getting on your damn silly point. You're attacking the Bible. I get you're obviously angry about your childhood, the Bible, or whatever. I get it. That's implied. You run the Freedom from Religion group. We already know that. You don't need to slag it on this show. I want to talk about the people.
How often, Tucker, do you get to hear informed criticism of the Bible? You really get to hear that. It's been pushed like it's a loving book, but it's full of fire and violence.
I don't think it's informed criticism. Look, I want to have a conversation with you about what you did and about whether you were representing the Constitution when you did it, or you were just flexing your muscle as a bully who runs a highly aggressive interest group. And so my question to you is, how is any group where faith is involved different from a Bible study group. There was a feminist group. There are certain articles of faith for feminists. Why is that different? It's not different. People have a right to freely associate and say what they think, and you're preventing them from exercising that right.
Because those teachers are the government. We don't have the separation of feminism and state in our country, but we do have enshrined in our Constitution the First Amendment that separates religion and government. We can talk about it. It doesn't separate. Have you read the First Amendment, Tucker? Of course I have. I do this Congress shall not establish a religion. The state can't make a religion. I get it. That is very different from that's not what it says. That's not what it says, Tucker. Have you read it? It says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the
Yeah, no law, you idiot. It's talking about making it a theocratic state, moron.
It's talking about Congress dictating what establishments of religion can, promote, write, things like that. Right? But they're using the establishment clause. They're using the establishment clause to be interpreted in such a way that the founders never intended.
Do you see him becoming unhinged, by the way, by this?
Yeah,
on how it was? Oh, God.
You and I have free exercise. You and I have free exercise, Tucker, but one thing we cannot do is ask the government to settle the argument. You see how uncomfortable you got when I was criticizing the Bible?
If nobody is asking the government to settle the argument, these were employees in their off hours talking about things that they personally believe. You don't forfeit your First Amendment rights or any of your constitutional rights just because you work for the government. Like, you know that. Yes, this has been said. Yes, you do. You are a zealot, and the idea that anything led to kids bugs you, and so you flex your muscle and wreck this little kid's club, and you're proud of it. And I just thought it was weird.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, but don't blame us. Blame the Supreme Court. The letter that we sent to the school explained very carefully why no reason you wrong. You don't get it.
I do get it. I read the letter, and you're wrong.
Pause the video.
What a piece of garbage.
I know, and then he brings up the Bible. He's hiding behind this decision. Look, this is a very well-funded atheist organization. It's the largest atheist organization in the United States. It's very well-funded. They have a staff of lawyers that go after municipalities, school things, about a Bible study that was taking place after school hours. Okay? This was a voluntaristic thing. Tucker Carlson was spot on. This guy is a bully. They hate religion. They hate the Bible. Listen to the vitriol coming out of his mouth. How much he hates the Bible. Okay,
he said he would do the same thing.
What it's all about.
And he said he would do the same thing for an atheist group. He's a piece of trash, sniveling little liar.
That is a total lie. How many lawsuits have they brought against atheist clubs? How many lawsuits have they brought about against that?
Not one. But wasn't I right? Didn't he completely change the conversation super fast?
I used to live around it.
Look.
So I used to live around. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom. No, go ahead.
I was about to say I used to live around ISU University. Okay, that's a liberal university, one of the most liberal universities on the planet. Okay, and I literally, if you know G-Man Dart, him and I went to one of their atheist meetings one day to crash it, and it was pretty hilarious. But the thing is though is that there are atheist clubs in these universities, and they were doing it in their off time. They were doing it in their private setting, in their private capacity, not during class hours or anything like that. They had the right to do that, and these sorts of clubs, I'm sure, will exist in many universities today. Is he going around to these universities trying to bring lawsuits against those? No, he's not. He's a piece of trash. He's a piece of trash liar. He knows dang well it has nothing to do whatsoever at all with this constitutional pseudo-legal constitutional crap he's talking about.
But just
nothing to do with any of that.
Just notice how he got so angry.
Dan Barker makes his living. He earns a very good living being the co-president, along with his wife, of the Freedom From Religion Foundation. So he gets paid a very good living to run the largest atheist organization, where he can have all of these lines pre-scripted, pre-memorized, okay, and he can spew out these half-truths, which you heard him say.
I wouldn't say
and I wouldn't say that, because the best lies are half-truths, okay?
Sure. I mean, God ripping body parts. I mean, come on.
I don't know if that's half-true. If he hasn't already, I would love for this clown to debate someone like Jordan Peterson. He'd get ripped apart.
No, I want him to debate Darth. Okay.
No,
I want to see
these
Darth.
guys are look. Some of these guys are well practiced.
Not like, come on, not like
verbal. Well, that's because it took me 10, 12 years to learn that you have to stay focused like a laser beam on the questions that you intend to ask, and not allow them to segue, to obfuscate. You know, they will do this notoriously, and we could do an analysis of this. I'm not going to do it right now, but we could do an analysis of this tomorrow or the next day, and I could show you the weasel words, the half-truths, the dodging, the evading. Don't blame us. Blame the Supreme Court.
It's classic sophistry.
Well, what do you mean? Don't blame you. You're an atheist organization. You are grounded to be anti-God. Okay. Yeah. This is a guy in many debates says atheism is just a lack of belief in God. Yet there are any number of placards and posters and billboards that they have paid to put up from the Freedom From Religion Foundation stating that there is no God.
And how's the Supreme Court ruling meant to be interpreted as exercising their free capacity outside of active hours? How is that ruling meant?
These people have a dedicated, they have a dedicated commercial, okay, that's on right now. I hear it all the time, okay, where they go around and they sit there and say that the First Amendment was built on atheistic principles and was not built on Christian principles. That's
a lie. I have a book on my computer. I have a book on my computer explaining the three basic God views of the Founding Fathers. Okay, the guy who wrote it is not a fundamentalist, and he said all analysis tend to misrepresent certain things. Now, I haven't finished the book; I just started it, but he points out that we have this notion that all the Founding Fathers were staunch Bible-believing Christians. Other people believe that all the Founding Fathers were mostly deists, and this is simply not the truth. It's broken down into like three categories. But the fact of the matter is, the Establishment Clause was just a wall of separation preventing the federal government, Congress, passing laws that would somehow regulate denominational practices. When it says Congress shall make no law with respect to an establishment of religion, what was the establishment of religion that it was referring to? It was referring to the prevailing denominations and churches in the various states that they wanted to prohibit Congress from passing laws that would interfere with the meddling of what their doctrines were, what their teachings were, what their practices were. That was all about. It had nothing to do with a local public school, whether they used the Bible as a reader or not. Okay, this is a later bastardization of the Supreme Court. So they say is, well, the word Congress there refers to the government, and so this will apply to any government agency, include the local school board. When this guy says, don't blame us, blame the Supreme Court. Okay?
That's not the accurate interpretation of that at all.
Yeah, I know. Tucker was spot on where he says this is just a special interest group, a highly funded atheist organization that is intent on bullying. The reason why the school system capitulated is because they didn't want to go through a legal process that would cost them an inordinate amount of money and limited resources to pay legal fees. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars
On top
in
of
legal
that,
fees.
It would
Yeah,
it would presumably be bad PR on top of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times, municipalities or school systems will buckle to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, not because they agree with them or that their concept of jurisprudence, but because of the imposing of just fighting it alone. Look, there are companies out there, both big and small, who, when they get sued by certain individuals, will settle out of court because they will have a smaller financial penalty to settle out of court if instead of paying lawyers to fight these cases, and even if they come out completely victorious, it'll cost them far more money than if they just settled out of court. Okay? And he's making it sound like, the school system oh, wow, the Freedom from Religion Foundation threatened to sue us, and that the light turned on that they were actually being unconstitutional. Does anybody believe that that's a correct
No.
what went on? Yeah.
It's not.
He's making it sound like that the school board was enlightened by the Freedom from Religion Foundation rather than they were bullied and intimidated by the threats of extremely costly lawsuits.
I know. If this group doesn't scream cult, I don't know what else does.
The guy is clearly a snake. Okay.
Is this all? Enlightened? Is this all?
What?
Or is there, the video? Is there more to it? Like this?
Oh, no.
That was all.
That's
That
the
was
end of
it.
it. But the reason why I put it up is because with Tucker Carlson, because he's really he knows his shit when it comes to the Constitution. And notice how Dan Barker changed, the conversation and regarded it to the Bible and everything, because he knows that Tucker Carlson knows what he's talking about, and he doesn't know what he's talking about as well. So then he changes it and brings up the Bible instead of saying, God is so terrible, he rips baby parts, and it's funny, the guy supports abortion.
See, here's the thing. Dan Barker does atheism and that type of crap for a living, but he stepped into Tucker's turf. Tucker does this constitutional and this journalistic stuff for a living, okay? So it's his job to know this type of stuff. When he stepped into his realm, of course he knew he was in deep garbage, so he had to change the nature of the conversation and try to squirm and grossly misinterpret the text. And Tucker, like Dark said, Tucker was spot on when he said, look, just because you're a government employee doesn't mean that abdicates or you give up your right to First Amendment. And did you hear him say in between, yes, you do? Did you hear him say that?
Could you go over that again, please? Because I'm doing something on my computer, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, so Tucker said just because you're a government employee, that doesn't mean you give up your First Amendment. And if you notice, Dan Barker said, yes, it does. You have to listen closely to catch it. I'll play it again. Give me a second.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just disgusting.
Now, I'm going to play it again, and you're going to hear exactly what he said.
Is that different? It's not different. People have a right to freely associate and say what they think, and you're preventing them from exercising that right.
Because those teachers are the government. We don't have the separation of feminism and state in our country, but we do have enshrined in our Constitution the First Amendment that separates religion and government. We can talk about other things. You could have a chess club.
It doesn't separate.
You read the First Amendment, Tucker?
Of course I have. I think it's First Amendment. Congress shall not establish a religion. The state can't make a religion. I get it. That is very different from
That's not what it says. That's not what it says, Tucker. Have you read it? It says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. You and I have free exercise. You and I have free exercise, Tucker. But one thing you and I cannot do is ask the government to settle the argument. You see how uncomfortable you got when I was criticizing the Bible? If nobody is asking the government to settle the argument, these were employees in their own
patently absurd.
talking about things that they personally believe. You don't forfeit your First Amendment rights or any of your constitutional rights just because you have worked for the government. Like, you know that. Yes, this has been established. Yes, you do. But you are
You hear that?
Of course.
so.
Yeah.
You forfeit your government rights. You forfeit your First Amendment rights as a government employee if you work in the public school system. Did you hear that?
Of course.
Yeah, and that's not what the Establishment Clause was intended by the founding fathers. They are bastardizing they had let me tell you something about the Freedom from Religion Foundation, okay? I want to get her name correctly. It's Ann Gaylor. Okay, just give me a second, okay? Okay, let me tell you about this organization. Okay, so it's Ann Nicole Gaylor versus Ann Lori Gaylor, which is her daughter, okay? Ann Lori Gaylor, she died in 2015, okay? She founded or co-founded the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and an organization or a fund to help women pay to kill their babies in Wisconsin. Okay, so this woman was Ann Nicole Gaylor was a rabid atheist. Now, we shouldn't be surprised that somebody who's a rabid atheist and supports the legal killing of babies. By the way, Ann Gaylor, who founded the Freedom from Religion Foundation, wrote a book called "Abortion is a Blessing." I'm not making this up. Okay.
Yeah.
She wrote, "Abortion is a blessing." Okay? Now, this same woman co-founded the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and Dan Barker and his wife, the daughter, Ann Lori Gaylor, worked for it, and then they became co-presidents. So the purpose of the Freedom from Religion Foundation is to snuff out religious, any kind of practices whatsoever, insofar as they think they can get away with it. You know, like, for example, he said, having a Bible study in a church or on weekends, that's wonderful. But wait a minute, he doesn't think it's wonderful. That's a lie, because he thinks that the Bible is an evil book from his perspective. Okay? If he felt that he could successfully sue and shut down churches, he would do it, in my opinion. Okay, now he might dispute that, but I don't think that would be the case. Right? So the Freedom from Religion Foundation was founded by a woman who was committed to help pay for killing unborn babies in abortion. Okay? So
that was hilarious.
Did that?
I would like to know what the impetus of his hatred of God truly is. I want to know.
I
what is
have
the
no
origin
idea.
of it?
No idea. I don't know much. He refuses to talk too much about his personal life. They've asked him. I think there was another Fox News interview that they did of him, and they asked him. I think it came out. It came out a long time ago, and they asked him like what made you become an atheist, and he tends to keep that private. Like, he doesn't want to talk about his private life. I guess, I don't know. I think he was a Roman Catholic.
I'll try to remember to bring up.
I think he was a Roman Catholic. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's all he claimed.
No, I don't think so. He claims that he was an evangelical minister.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, Roman Catholic evangelical.
Now, what I've found is when atheists tend to talk about their history, there's a tendency that I've noticed to embellish or exaggerate them. Now, I'm not saying that he wasn't a clergyman or a minister.
He was a pastor. That's what he was. He was a pastor.
Well, yeah, okay, but to what extent?
I don't know. He doesn't talk about that. I don't know why.
Yeah, we have atheists who will claim, because they took a Bible course somewhere, they exaggerate that to, I was training to be a minister, or I was going to seminary.
No, he claimed that he was a worship pastor. That's what he claimed. I can even send you.
Okay, listen to me. That's something that I would completely accept.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between being a worship pastor. By the way, Dan Barker is, as far as I know, an accomplished pianist. And in fact, at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they have a conference room where they actually have a grand piano there where they have concerts from time to time. So Dan Barker is very talented when it comes to musically and playing the piano. I'm not going to take that away from him.
Yeah, so was the devil.
But you brought up the issue. You brought up the issue that he was a worship pastor. Now, could you tell me where you got that from?
It was a. Let me try to find the video.
I'm not questioning the legitimacy of it. I would just like to know the source of that, because there's a big difference between being a worship pastor versus being a full-time pastor.
Right. No, there is a difference.
Okay.
It took me a couple of minutes because I didn't hear his whole story. It was an interview done. Hold on one second.
Well, if you find it, I would definitely like to see that.
Have you seen the debate with him and James White?
Only a snippet of it.
Oh yeah, he got absolutely embarrassed.
Yeah, he humiliated him. There's a section in the video, that's where I got it from. There's a section in the video where he talks about, look, I think I know what I'm talking about, Mr. White. Okay, I was a worship pastor. He literally claimed it. He literally claimed that in that debate. And if I can find the time on the video says I can send it to you guys.
He was a worship pastor. Now the question is this. What does that entail? Remember how I told you that in my biased opinion, when atheists talk about their religious service, that I believe, based upon many instances, that they exaggerate, they embellish, they present half-truths, okay? Now, I haven't heard him refer to himself as a worship pastor. I've heard him present himself as an evangelical pastor. But there's a significant difference between a quote-unquote worship pastor versus somebody who's a full-time pastor. There's a significant difference, okay? Now, what I'd like to know is, did Dan Barker go to Bible college? Did he go to seminary? What specifically was his clergy role? What did he do? Did he preach from the Bible on a regular basis? Okay.
I can't answer. I'm not so sure on that. I only know.
No, I'm not asking you those questions. These are rhetorical questions that I'm asking that I think we would all benefit from knowing more about his background. But they have an axe to grind. But listen, you must not forget his history. Okay, he met Anne Laurie Gaylor on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Okay, they met there. They were both atheists. He was an atheist at that time. Okay? He went on to work either for or with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and he and his wife eventually became the co-presidents. Right? And it's a very it's probably the most well-funded atheist group in the United States, and it certainly has the largest atheist membership, right? And they have quite a legal staff that what they're attempting to do is what they're not doing is checking out, seeing where the federal government or states are trying to dictate new religions or dictate what religious establishments do. He's going after a Bible study class that is it's purely voluntaristic, held at the location of the school by a volunteer teacher and students who volunteer, and he's going after suing them, okay? All in the name of fulfilling the Constitution. The Founding Fathers would turn in their grave if they knew that somebody was taking the Establishment Clause as a justification to sue a school district so that a teacher volunteer could be prohibited from having a Bible study on their free time after school hours by a volunteer students and students that were there voluntarily. This is a complete bastardization of the Establishment Clause.
Yeah, I know. And they promote, and they have these commercials now where they're saying that, we just want to restore what the Founding Fathers taught. They taught an atheistic principle. It wasn't Christian. That's a lie that the Christians made up.
This is not true. The overwhelming majority, if not all of the Founding Fathers, had belief in God. Okay? Now, some of them were fundamentalist. Some of them, a minority of them, might have deistic notions, and there were some that were in the middle ground there. But this idea, see, when they said they wanted to set up a secular government, this again is a misrepresentation. Okay, like I think Tom Locke pointed this out to me. There are two treaties of Paris, and in one of them it refers to the Trinity in the Treaty of Paris. Okay. So this idea,
well, actually, there's the Treaty of Tripoli, and the Treaty of Paris says, "Under our Most High and Holy Undivided Trinity."
Yeah. Well, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point is, what they wanted to do was they wanted to avoid a meddling of the federal government trying to dictate what religious institutions could practice or could teach. Because remember, they came from an environment of the Church of England. Okay? So the Establishment Clause has to be understood not in our modern context, but based upon the idea that the government and the Church of England would dictate what churches could do or denominations could do. Look, they're purposely bastardizing the Constitution in the same way that the Supreme Court bastardized the Constitution and passed Roe versus Wade. Same thing.
I wonder what is the school response when Dan Barker did this. I don't know.
Look, you have to understand these school districts, even though they may be doing something that is entirely constitutional, they get bullied because of the threat of lawsuits.
Oh, man.
Because dealing with lawsuits can cost the school district an exorbitant amount of money. Okay?
If you want to just keep fighting and then the legal fees pack up, it's like, do they want to continue?
Yeah.
On the...
That was laughably bad. I can't believe it.
I guess I'll just have to read Dan Barker's biography.
Yeah, go ahead and read it. And then if I find the part in the video clip where he said that he was a worship pastor, I will find it. I'll send it to you. Okay?
Yeah,
that's what he said.
I'm definitely going to get a copy of his biography and read it because he's a very interesting character.
No, he is.
But he's not as slick and smart as he thinks he is. He's well-funded, and he has all the time in the world to do these shenanigans.
Yeah, he knows how to barricade the conversation and twist specific things when something's not going his way.
Look, he gets paid to do that. Just think how much better I could be at this if I was paid to do it.
Oh, I can't.
He knew that Tucker Carlson knew what he was talking about. Like, he knew it. Like, he knew that he had no competition, so that's why he brought up the Bible. That's why he goes, like, you see, God is just so awful. He's so mean. He's such a bad boy. You know, he baby parts and everything. Have you read the Bible, Tucker? And that wasn't even the conversation. This just goes to show you how sick and twisted these individuals are, man.
I wonder if the school wanted to allow, the Bible club to keep going on, but then it's like, the lawsuits, and if we don't, it's gonna...
That's not an only time, by the way, that Dan Barker has done something like this, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. He also, there's a news article that came out a couple years ago that they put a statue, it was Christmas time, and they put a statue of the virgin birth of Jesus, right? And he went by the church and he set a complaint that they shouldn't be putting his. I think it was at a park or something like that. It was near a church, near a university. It was a non-denominational Christian church, and they had a statue or something like that up, and he didn't like it because it was at a university, and they said that he complained and they had him take it down.
Man,
Like, he's done this many times before.
I did not know that. Man, it seems he's just going after...
It's a public university. Public universities protect the First Amendment. Wow.
Yeah. If I can find the news article, I'll send it to you. This was like just 2 years ago.
2 years? Wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, he's done many things like this where he's complained. He's also known to put banners up in New York saying that Jesus never died because Jesus never existed. Like he puts banners up in New York. He does it's almost kind of like street epistemology, what he does, or he used to do it. He doesn't do it much anymore. But he used to do, how he got started, was through street epistemology. He would go on the streets and put up banners saying that, God probably doesn't exist, so you should move on with your life, or something like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? Listen to this guy.
He even tried to do he borrowed from the mega-selling book, The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. Yeah, Rick Warren wrote the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, which is a garbage book. It's a garbage book, but a lot of people have been duped by it. But he did a parody of it from an atheistic point of view called The Life-Driven Purpose. Okay. So he's giving the atheist version of a purpose-driven life.
In my youth, before I knew any better and was more studied up and learned, I actually thought that Rick Warren book was a good book. But then I grew up and wised up and recognized it for the heap of garbage it really is. And recognized